So welcome friends, what if Harry mysterious power of Youkai of grudge and Harry x Yukari. Haley staggered through the snow, her footfalls becoming heavy, uggling through the sheets of wind and sleet. A part of her knew she couldn't go on like this. Already she was struggling to stay upright, yet she kept moving forward. It was all she could do. After all, going back was out of the question. Not after what she had done. She could feel the blood running down from the corners of her mouth, freezing in the bitter cold. For some reason, that bothered her less than the cold. And the fact that she wasn't bothered in turn bothered her more than both combined, all the more considering that wasn't even her own blood. It had been tasty, almost sweet. It should have made her sick, but all in all, the act alone had made her feel more alive than she ever had been during her admittedly short life, and no matter how many times she replayed the memory in her head, all she could drum up was a mild contentment. What is happening to me? She wheezed through burning lungs and frostbitten lips. Not that it really mattered, as her legs gave out from underneath her and she collapsed into the snowy street. She did the only thing she could do, rolling onto her side and curling up to conserve what little heat she had left. The primal part of her mind knew she was going to die. And she began to cry. She was going to die in the snow and no one would even care, her 6-year-old mind couldn't take it. But a small unknown part of her head reminded her that even if she died here, at least she died free, and someone who wronged her at least suffered. She didn't know where that came from, but she chose to take comfort in those words, and they offered her a surprising amount of warmth. My, whatever have we here? Came a voice, surprisingly audible in the blizzard that surrounded her. The sound around her quickly faded, and the wind immediately stilled. And a new warmth seeped into her body. She uncurled and looked around, the frozen tears on her cheeks quickly thawing. The blizzard was still all around her, but it seemed she now inhabited a small bubble of calm and warmth. And it was quiet, as if the storm was suddenly very far away. But more important was the woman standing in front of her, similarly unaffected by the wild weather. She towered over Haley, her violet eyes twinkling with mischief. Her long hair was a golden blonde, and she was dressed in a strange, expensive-looking purple dress, with a pinkish mob cap tied with a red ribbon, and had an open parasol resting on her shoulder. Such a tiny little thing, all on its own, like a little puppy lost in the snow. "Might you share with me your name, little pup?" the woman said, crouching down in front of her. Haley struggled into a kneeling position to face the woman. She felt compelled to answer, Haley Potter, who are you, miss?" The woman giggled before eaching forward with her free hand and ruffling Haley's hair. "My, I do love the bluntness of children. I have a feeling that we are going to get along well." Haley was taken aback by the suddenness of the affectionate gesture. The woman sighs, "Oh yes, I suppose an introduction is in order. Very well, young Yukai, I am Yukari Yakumo, and I am going to be your new best friend." Haley blinked, her head suddenly becoming heavy. "New friend. Yes, new friend, and I see the change is starting to take its toll. Don't worry, sleep. When you wake up we will be somewhere warm, I promise," Yukari said, even as Haley's eyelids started drooping. "Okay, Haley," quickly becoming too tired not to take it at face value. "Good night, Miss Yuki." She fell forward into Yukari's arms. Yukari giggled, now that was just adorable. She gently picked up the young girl, and started stroking her head gently. "I'm going to have a lot of fun with you, little Haley, I do hope we get along." In the first blurry, confused moments of consciousness, Haley wondered if this was heaven. She was lying on what had to be the softest bed she had ever slept in. She couldn't remember how she got here, but she wasn't keen on leaving. Even as consciousness tugged harder and harder on her mind, she just pulled the blanket tighter, snuggling into its depths. Her resolve was weakened, however, when she heard a door open, and the smell of something tasty wafted into her cocoon of warmth. She unwrapped herself and sat up to see the woman from before, this time holding a tray with a bowl and jug of juice. "Looks like that got your attention," Yukari said teasingly. But Haley's focus was on the bowl, the origin of the smell. She suddenly felt extremely hungry, not that that was really any different from usual. Haley spent a great deal of time hungry, but it felt more acute than normal, like she would go mad if she didn't have that soup. "Don't get up, little Yukai," Yukari said cheerfully, as she pulled some legs out from underneath the tray, and placed it in front of Haley. You deserve some breakfast in bed after the ordeal you just went through. Haley was too hungry to argue, picking up a spoon and digging into the heavenly soup with gusto. It was unlike anything she had ever eaten. She had no idea what kind of soup it was, nor could she identify the meat, but she loved it. And then there was that strange sweetness, which felt strangely familiar, and strangely addictive. She was sure she had tasted it somewhere before. As her supernatural hunger was quenched, she suddenly remembered where she had tasted it before. Her eating slowed and she looked down at the soup, a worried sort of confusion written on her face. "Oh, so you recognized it, did you?" said Yukari, who was kneeling next to the bed and watching Haley with an amused expression. "Don't worry, it isn't anyone you know." "So it is someone then." "People meet," said Haley, still confused. "Why yes, does that bother you?" Yukari said with a predatory grin. Haley had to think about this for a moment before saying, "I think it bothers me that I'm not bothered." Yukari gave a laugh. "That's just the last shreds of your human conscience. Don't worry, it will pass." Haley was still looking hesitant, so Yukari said, "Come on, eat up, otherwise it will get cold. You shouldn't let good food go to waste. It's disrespectful to both the cook and the cooked." Haley's 6-year-old mind couldn't argue with that logic, and ate the rest of the soup with steadily growing enthusiasm. "Now there's a good girl, Haley. We will make a proper yukai out of you yet," Yukari said. Haley paused in the middle of drinking the last dregs of soup. "What's a yukai?" "Why, I am, of course, and now, so are you," Yukari said, softly pressing the tip of Haley's nose, making her go cross-eyed. "But I'm not a yukai, I'm a girl," Haley said, in an impressive display of child logic. "So am I, little Haley, yet yukai I am, and yukai you be," Yukari said, waving her finger in front of her face. "In fact most yukai are girls, funnily enough. But, what is a yukai, and why am I a yukai?" she asked desperately, extremely confused. "Yuck." Ari tutted and booped Haley's nose again. "I'm afraid such a complicated question might well be outside your comprehension." She laughed at the pout she was now receiving, "But I suppose I can give you a simplified version. You see, yukai are very special people, although that specialness can vary greatly." Haley was hanging on her every word. "Some are strong, so strong that they can crush mountains between their hands. Some are fast, and can ride the winds around the world faster than it takes for you to blink. Some are wise, so wise that the very secrets of existence are laid bare. And some like me," she stood up. And behind her a strange opening full of unblinking red eyes appear, can bend the very world to their whim. She stepped backwards and vanished into the void, the gap closing behind her. Only for another to open up above in front of her on the bed, and Yukari to rise out of it, to once more lean on her hands and examine Haley for a reaction. Haley blinked, looking down at the eye-filled void. She leaned down to try and see under it. There was nothing there, just her own feet. Straightening up she said, "Is that magic?" Yukari couldn't help but laugh from the sheer innocence. "Why yes, yes it is. My magic, to be precise. I am the border of the phantasm, or the yukai of boundaries, to put it simply." "Wow," said Haley, "what else can you do?" "Many, many things," said Yukari. "But what is more important is what you can do." Haley's eyes opened wide. "You mean?" "Why yes, you can perform magic too, in fact you always could. Even before you became special," Yukari said. "After all, have you ever noticed strange things happening around you?" Haley thought hard for a moment, and then nodded. "Well, that was all that magic building up inside of you, trying to get out. And helping you when you were in distress. And considering how much distress both you and your body was in due to your treatment of you by that family of yours, you had a lot of magic to spare." Haley frowned at the word family. But it didn't seem to affect her as much as it should, as if her mind had already registered them as insignificant. So she pushed on with her questioning. "Then why am I a yukai? What makes me special?" Yukari booped her again. "Let's not get too hasty. A yukai you might be, but you are a young one, practically a newborn. An ability may emerge, but for now, you are simply a yukai." Haley pouted. "I'm not newborn, I'm 6 years old." "Ah, said Yukari, "you were 6-year-old as a human. But you have been a yukai for only a day. But don't worry. As a yukai you will soon be more powerful than most humans could dream of." But, said Haley, trying to word her frustrations. How am I a Yukai? What makes me any different than how I was before? I see you have already developed a little common sense. We will have to deal with that later. But for now some proof might be necessary. Although if you search your mind you will find all the proof you need. I will. Yukari smiled. When you woke up in your little cupboard under the stairs this morning you felt different, did you not? You had gone without dinner the night before, for so. Me small crime most probably committed by that fat little cousin of yours. You were hungry, ravenous even. She leaned in, her smile growing predatory. That vulture you call an ant decided arbitrary. Lee that you should go without breakfast too. Your hunger grew, and then the little lard ball decided to rub it in your face. You were angry, hungry, but most importantly you were alone, with a little pea. Iggy who was suddenly looking very tasty indeed. Maybe if he'd paid any attention to you, he might have noticed your new teeth. Haley's hand went to her mouth. Her teeth felt sharper, more jagged. There. E was definitely more points than she ever remembered having. Yukari helpfully supplied a mirror. Haley looked at herself and tried smiling. Her grin had a slightly sharky quality now. Her canines had also extended into full fangs. It suits you, makes you cute in a dangerous way. Either way they did quite a number on that wretched cousin's arm. Went right through the bone. It gave quite a satisfactory crunch, did it not? Haley couldn't help but nod. If you were lucky, he might never be able to use that arm again. He could spend the rest of his life cursing your name. Doesn't that excite you? Haley couldn't deny it. The very thought of permanently maiming Dudley after all the abuse he had put her through sent a shiver of excitement down her spine. That is your proof right there, you have been hungry before. But you have never thought of that useless pig as food before. You have been angry before, but never enough to maim. And never before until this day have you had the power to physically overpower him. And yet on this day you did all three. You have shed your humanity and have become something greater. Yukari leaned in again. You are Yukai, and your body knows it, even if you don't. Haley's head is spinning. This is too much information for her 6-year-old mind to process. Thankfully Yukari decided to show mercy. Relax, this might be a lot to take in, but there is no rush. You have all the time in the world, and I am willing to give a helping hand. What do I do? Haley said, for the first time in her life completely lost. Yukari boops Haley's nose again. I already told you, relax. You are Yukai now, there is no right way to be one, just do what comes naturally, I am willing to catch you when you stumble. Relax, Haley repeated, as if not quite familiar with the concept. Yukari retreated into her gap, closing it behind her before reappearing by the curtained door-sized windows. Of course if you want me to make a suggestion, she said opening the curtains. Revealing the Mediterranean Ocean in all its splendor. While it might be off-season, Santorini is quite pleasant even in the winter. When Yukari says she will take you somewhere warm, she doesn't mess about. And so began the first day of Haley's new life. And under the warm rays of the Mediterranean sun, for the first time she was looking forward to what tomorrow might bring. Hong Mailing exhaled in her hands. And rubbed them together in an attempt to generate warmth. While her inhuman body was perfectly capable of staving off the Romanian winter, it doesn't mean that she liked it. Mailing was not overly fond of winter, her gardens were covered in snow, and her only other job, gate guard, meant long hours of doing nothing but standing around shivering all day. There wasn't even much point to her job. The mansion doesn't get a lot of visitors at the best of times, even that wizarding lot usually knew better than to come looking. Hell, it's not even as if you could even find the mansion unless the mistress wished you to, or knew what you were looking for. Add to all that the bitter cold of Romania, and the chances of guests invited or otherwise was practically nil. Yet this was Mailing's job. Regardless of its almost utter pointlessness, and despite her grumbling, she liked her job. Not a lot was expected of her, just guard the gate and tend the gardens. It was a simple and rewarding existence for Mailing's old and weary soul, and she is thankful for Remelia for providing it. The mansion was a nice place for people like her who simply didn't belong in the world anymore. And if that sense of belonging meant she had to beat up a vampire hunter or two, Mailing was all the happier. She suppressed a shiver as a gust of wind blew by. Still, she could do without the cold. Just as she was considering nipping inside for a blanket, a stool, and maybe a hot cocoa, she spotted some movement out in the snow. Coming up the path, two figures. One she recognized as Yukari Yakumo. A very powerful and rather well-known, albeit enigmatic, Yukai from Japan, who had been visiting the mansion several times over the past decade or two, to plan something with Remilia. Although Mei-ling didn't know the specifics, she had heard from Patchouli that apparently Remilia is planning to move the mansion soon, and this apparently involves the strange Yukai sage. Not that it mattered much to Mei-ling. No matter where the manor happened to be, the front gate was still the front gate, and the garden was still the garden. Although in the present, she is hoping for somewhere warmer. Regardless, Yukari's presence was no shock. Although what was surprising was that she was actually using the front gate. Usually, when she wanted to come in, she would already be in. The oath, or figure being led by the hand by Yukari was clearly a child of about 6. But was so thoroughly wrapped in winter clothing that it was the only meaningful observation Mei-ling could make, other than her aura suggesting a freshly transformed human Yukai. "Good afternoon, Miss Mei-ling. Is the mistress of the house in?" Yukari said, addressing Mei-ling cheerily. "Lady Scarlet is always in," said Mei-ling politely, giving a bow. Mei-ling found it difficult to relax around Yukari. Every one of her finely honed instincts could tell Mei-ling that she is trouble. And there was always that glint of mischief in her eyes that enhanced that. Nevertheless, Yukari is welcome in the manor, both as a friendly acquaintance of the mistress, and that it would be totally pointless to try and stop her. So Mei-ling generally dealt with Yukari by being polite enough to cover her discomfort, and boring enough not to catch the border Yukai's attention. Unfortunately, this didn't currently seem to be working. Of course, she doesn't get out much these days, does she? Rather sad to see such a charming and powerful individual wasting away out in this dark old manor, isn't it? You could look at it like that, Mei-ling said diplomatically. Unfortunately, Yukari seemed to be committed to this conversation. Of course, if we are talking about wasting away, there is always that magician of yours. When was the last time she even left the library? Lady Patchouli suffers from poor health, and when she is not busy she joins us for meals, said Mei-ling, putting up a minor defense for Patchouli's lifestyle. Yukari wasn't finished yet though. And then there is the young Scarlet. Poor thing. When was the last time she even saw the open sky? What do you want, Miss Yukari? Mei-ling said, deciding to risk retribution before this conversation got any more uncomfortable. Yukari grinned, well, a reaction for a start, but for the most part one have some business with Remilia. However, I need someone watch little Haley for me while we chat. She patted the head of the child. Would you be a dear and keep an eye on the girl for me? Well, I'm pretty sure Sakuya would be more. Wonderful, thank you so much for your help, Yukari said, clapping her hands with a big Cheshire grin. Mei-ling sighed. No problem. Yukari turned and kneeled down to the child's level. Now I'm going to have a chat with the owner of this house about grown-up things. You be a good girl and stay with the nice gatekeeper until I get back. Big green eyes peered out from in between her beanie and scarf and behind thick glasses. It seems she didn't want to be left alone, but she nodded anyway. Yukari patted her on the head again, before standing and walking into a gap. The girl looked almost ready to follow, but it closed again. What follows was a little awkward silence, as the girl stood alone in the snow. It went on just long enough for Mei-ling's pity to kick in. Hey kid, come over here. The wall will protect you from the worst of the wind. The girl gave a start and looked at Mei-ling searchingly. Mei-ling responded by patting the wall next to her. Come on, it won't bite, and neither will I. I'm not that kind of Yukai. This seemed to assuage the girl's doubts, and she stood next to Mei-ling, snuggling into her scarf. There was a more companionable silence as they huddled by the wall. But Mei-ling decided to break it. She was curious, and it wasn't every day she had company. So how long have you been a Yukai kid? The girl looked up at Mei-ling, who smiled encouragingly. She mumbled something, but Mei-ling couldn't make it out though the thick scarf. Couldn't catch that. The girl pulled down her scarf. About 2 weeks. She mumbled, softly. Wow, that's pretty young. How did it happen? Was it an intentional transformation? Or did it just sorta happen? Just sort of happened, I guess. The girl said, just woke up with sharp teeth and really hungry, and then I bit my cousin. A people eater, huh? Don't see them too often these days. Mei-ling mused to herself. I guess that makes you like me, although I can't quite pinpoint the moment it happened. I just kinda realized one day that I wasn't human anymore. I didn't know until Yukari told me. Haley said. Now that's another thing. How does a freshly transformed end up with Yukari Yakumo of all people as a chaperone? Mailing said. I don't know, said the girl. But I like her. She's nice to me. Is that so? Mailing said. For some reason the ideas of Yukari and nice didn't really fit together in her head. As if sensing her doubt, the child quickly said. It's true. She says nice things to me, and she hasn't hit me once, and she gives me nice things to wear. Okay, I get the picture. Mailing said, while filing that middle bit under, worrying. The child huffed slightly. You seem to think highly of her. Mailing said. The child looked at the ground. She said she was my friend, that was the nicest thing anyone had ever done for me. Mailing winced internally. That was simultaneously the most heartwarmingly pure, yet depressingly sad thing she had ever heard from a child's mouth. What the hell happy? Ned to this kid to lower her standards to such a degree to make that her life's highlight. Mailing decided to check a little deeper. And how did you end up with her? The girl seemed to think about it before answering. She found me in a snowstorm, then she took me to a really comfy bed, and fed me some really yummy soup, that apparently had people in it. Her voice steadily picked up enthusiasm as she talked. But that was apparently okay, because I was a Yukai, and Yukai are supposed to do that kind of thing, and then it turned out she had brought me to an island called, Santorini. And it was really nice, with lots of pools and beaches and really cool towns on hills, and then she bought me a whole bunch of new clothes that actually fit me, and that I was allowed to keep. And then after 2 weeks she brought me here. The girl started breathing again. Mailing laughed. Is that so, huh? Well, I guess if I had been given a 2-week Mediterranean vacation I'd be pretty happy too. Either way, I'm happy for you. Sounds like life has been treating you rough. There was a little silence as Mailing pondered what she had been told. Before coming to a little decision. Just occurred to me that we haven't been introduced properly yet. My name is Hong Mailing, I'm the gardener and guard of this house, she said, kneeling down and extending her hand for a handshake. Call me Mailing though. Haley stared at the hand, before taking it. I'm Haley Potter, call me Haley. Mailing smiled before gently taking Haley's hand and emptying the contents of her other hand into it. Several brightly colored candies. Mailing had intended to give them to Flandra after dinner. But she had a whole bag back in her room and it wouldn't take much extra time to get more. Eiley looked down at the candies, then back at Mailing, who said. Go on, they're yours. I've decided to be your friend too. Nothing wrong with giving a friend sweets, right? The girl looked at Mailing. Before beaming and throwing her little arms around Mailing for a hug. Thank you. Hey, don't worry about it. Mailing said. All in all, the girl reminded her a little of Flan. Only a little less potentially murderous. That's what friends do after all. A loose gust of wind blew by, and it gave Mailing an idea. I'll tell you what, no point just shivering next to a wall. How about we have a little fun? Oh, Remilia Tilda, Yukari said in a sing-song voice, stepping out into the vampire's favorite sitting room. I have a favor to ask you, Tilda. Remilia was of course waiting for her. She would be AP. Ready, lousy manipulator of fate if she couldn't anticipate surprise visitors. Oh really? And what might someone such as I offer one such as you? Oh, it's nothing too urgent. Why don't we do a little powwow first? A little bit of catching up. Yukari tittered. Very well. Sit down. I had meant to ask you some questions anyway. Remilia said, as Sakuya materialized with a tea tray. Care for tea? Yukari sat down gracefully opposite Remilia as Sakuya set down the tray. I've never said no. Mind if I start, Yukari? Remilia asked, as the tea was poured. I am quite keen to know when we might relocate. Eager to get out of Europe are we? Yukari said, before sniffing her tea. Oh, how I do love Miss Izuyoi's tea. The leaves are from Mailing's garden too. We are never for want of quality. She also gave a sniff. I believe the blood is from 1957, a Spanish nobleman if I am any judge. But to answer your question, yes, the old country is starting to wear very thin indeed. What with the advances in technology and the increased vigilance of those so-called wizards, it's getting harder and harder to have any fun at all. I can't really imagine those poor excuses for magicians are giving you much trouble, are they? Yukari said. Not particularly, but they are a frightful pain to deal with. All the secrecy has gone to their heads, I'm afraid. Even their magic is subdued and pitiful. They fear power to an almost insane degree, and it's only gotten worse since that Dark Lord of Tier went and got himself killed. Magicians with actual power and drive like patchouli are a dying breed. And even then they tend to get swallowed up in the enforced mediocrity that surrounds them. A sad situation, to be sure. The art of magic is well and truly dead in Europe. Yukari said, shaking her head. Quite. But might you answer my original question? After all you have told me of Gensokyo, I am quite keen for the change in scenery. Yukari sighed. I'm sorry to say the move might have to be delayed. The Hakare Shrine Maiden has just passed away rather prematurely. How unfortunate. I take it that is going to set me back somewhat. Remilia said. Unfortunately so. It's probably going to be at least a decade before her daughter will be able to get things back in order. Yukari scowled. This happens almost every time. The minute a Hakare bears a viable heir, all the Yukai who want her dead treat it like open season. As it happens, the heir in question is just over 6 years old and had barely started her training. She's a firstborn too, so no siblings to teach her anything about her job. She's powerful at least, but power didn't do much favors to her mother. It might fall to me to teach her. A Yukai teaching a priestess. Remilia said, smirking. I am well aware of the irony. Yukari said. But nevertheless, until I get Gensokyo stabilized and young Reimu situated into her role, we may have to hold off for a decade, maybe more. Remilia sighed. Very well. It is disheartening. But then what's another 10 years to a 500-year-old vampire? Thank you for your understanding. Your patience is appreciated. Yukari said. I think this wraps up my questioning. Remilia said. Now if I might ask, what is this favor you were asking about? I think you have let me stew in my suspense long enough. Yukari put her finger to her lip in mock thought. Yes, I suppose I have. Does this favor have anything to do with the situation in Gensokyo? Remilia said. Yukari waved her off. No, nothing that serious. This is a pet project if anything. I suppose Avenue noticed the individual I brought with me. It was rather hard not to. Remilia said, she has a very powerful fate attached to her, but that fate has been twisted and bent to an almost ludicrous degree, it's still holding. But just barely. I take it you had something to do with that. Oh no, that's the most fascinating part, it did that entirely on its own, with almost no intervention on my part. In fact, I had to prevent it from breaking itself when she nearly killed herself in the snow. Now that is curious. But what has this got to do with me? Do you wish for me to break it for you without ending her life? Remilia asked. Yukari laughed. Oh goodness no, I want to see where this goes. For you see, that is what my pet project is. I want to follow her thread of fate to its end, while keeping as close to breaking point as possible. Remilia leaned in. Now that does sound fun. What exactly do you need from me? Oh, not much right now. Maybe more down the line. But I want mostly is the use of your townhouse in London. Yukari said. Remilia's eyebrow raised. Not that I object, but why do you want that dingy old place? I haven't been paying it much mind, to be honest. I even had all of the fairy maids relocated here. It's been all but abandoned for the past 17 years. Yes, and it's the perfect haunt for a young Yukai to learn the ropes, said Yukari, clapping her hands. Allow me to explain. You see, little Haley needs to remain in London, or at least Europe. As if I bring her back to Gensokyo, she might be out of reach of her strong fate, and it might very well snap then and there. But due to some circumstances, she is unable to return to her previous residence. Circumstances, Remilia said. It turns out little Haley is a flesh eater, and took quite an impressive chunk out of her cousin before running away. Yukari said. Although if you ask anyone, they deserved it. I see, so my townhouse is a convenient location to house her, said Remilia. Oh, it isn't just that. Yukari said. It's also dark, imposing, and heavily warded as to avoid detection. All in all, it's the perfect place for a young Yukai to consolidate her power. Not to mention comfy and opulent. I see what you mean. Very well, I will allow it, said Remilia, but on the condition that you keep me posted on this pet project of yours. This is probably the most interesting thing to happen around here in half a century. I am quite happy with those terms, said Yukari. And they shook on it. Yukari got up. Well, if that will be all, I must be on my way. I must get young Hale. EY settled into her new home by nightfall. Very well, I shall accompany you to the door. I think I might like to meet Miss Haley before she departs. Despite the size of the manor, the trip was shish. Or, considering that the inner dimensions of the manor are entirely at Sakuya's beck and call, this is no surprise. But when the huge oak doors opened before them, they were greeted with mailing rue. NNING around the courtyard making airplane noises, while she held Haley over her head with one arm, while Haley held her arms out beside her giggling and squealing with joy. This went on for a few or seconds until Mailing noticed the group at the door, where she petered out awkwardly. After a moment of silence, she rubbed the back of her neck with her free hand. Hey, I was just keeping the kid company. We can see that, Sakuya said, halfway between amusement and exasperation. You can put her down now. Right. Mailing carefully put Haley down, who couldn't help groaning in disappointment. Keep up the good work, Mailing, Remelia said, with a sardonic edge. By the way, make yourself presentable. We are going to have some more uninvited, and most definitely unwanted guests coming up to the manor. Make sure you give them the cold shoulder. Mailing bowed and made to her post by the gate. But Haley grabbed her hand, and asked, Are you in trouble? Mailing crouched down and ruffled her beanied head. Not really, but I will be if I don't get back to my post. Don't worry, I'll be fine. If you ever feel like it, come and visit. I'll make a little bit of time for you. Thank you, Mailing, Haley said, hugging her leg before letting go and letting the martial arts Yukai return to her post by the front gate. So that is the fabled dragon of the East, Yukari said, watching Mailing's retreating back. When you see how good she is with kids, it certainly makes room for doubt. Mailing gave up on all that long before I met her. She much prefers being a gardener. She's also rather fond of Flandra, Remelia said. I suppose if you can manage her, you could manage nearly anybody. Yukari mused, before beckoning Haley over. Haley, I'd like you to meet Remelia Scarlet. She is a vampire Yukai. Haley looked up at Remelia in awe, for Haley was short enough to do so. Remelia soaked up the attention. You mean, vampires are real, and they are Yukai? Why yes, Haley. And Miss Remelia is doing you a very big favor. So be a good girl and thank her. Yukari said. Thank you, Miss Remelia, said Haley dutifully, bowing like Yukari had taught her. Think nothing of it, Remelia said gracefully. Allow me to also affirm the invitation given by Mailing. Feel free to visit anytime should Yukari allow it. The doors of the Scarlet Devil Mansion are always open to interesting and well-mannered Yukai such as yourself. Privately, Remelia was thinking about how a Yukai with such a potent fate was worth keeping an eye on, and ingratiating herself early on GHT yield a powerful ally somewhere down the line. But even to Remelia the happy smile that Haley flashed could very well be reward enough. As Yukari said her goodbyes and led Haley through a new gap, Haley said, I like Yukai. They are nice. Is that so? Yukari said, smiling. Haley's Yukai education was coming along well. And this is where you will be staying, Haley. As they stepped out onto the pavement. It was a large Victorian-era townhouse. However, it was difficult to make out any more detail than that, as the garden out front seems to have grown and obscured most of the bottom story. However, what can be seen is the same blood-red bricks as the manor they just left. Combine that with the thick window shutters and the nameplate by the gate attested to this to being the property of the Scarlet family. Whoa, this is big, Haley said. Not as big as the SDM, but its base was as big as the Dursleys' whole yard, and it was at least twice as tall. And for the time being, it's all yours, said Yukari. Shall we have a look inside? Haley was running down the various hallways, opening doors at random and goggling at the contents, before sprinting off to another random door. This was all hers. For someone who had spent her whole life in a cupboard under the stairs, this fact was positively mind-boggling. She didn't even know it was possible to own this much stuff, and yet Yukari said this was all hers. It was at this point Haley realized that Yukari was no longer behind her. She looked around and couldn't find her nearby either. She started retracing her steps, until she found her sitting in one of the lounge rooms, stifling a yawn. Nice to have you back, Haley. I was worried I might have to come find you. What's wrong, Yukari? Haley said, worried that she might have done something wrong. Oh, nothing, it's just that the past few weeks have taken its toll. At Haley's confused expression, Yukari clarified, I usually sleep through winter, you see. The cold season doesn't really agree with me. So I hibernate. Hibernate. It means I go to bed at the end of autumn and don't get up until spring. She explained, barring some important events like New Year's, of course. But I have not been able to sleep for the past 2 weeks due to looking after you. Now that you are nice and situated, I was considering going home to resume my slumber. Haley felt like she was just punched in the gut. You are leaving, at least until spring. I'll send my Shikigami in to check on you periodically. Yukari explained. I'm going to be all alone. Haley whimpered. Yukari caught Haley's pitiful expression and sighed. I see, I meant for this to test your independence. But I see this might be a bit too much for you at this time. Haley perked up slightly. I'm still leaving. Haley sagged. But I will be leaving you with a friend to keep you company. Haley perked up again. A new friend. Yes, said Yukari, opening up a gap in the air in front of her and fishing around in it. Let's see, got her. There was an indignant yowl and Yukari lifted out a black cat. It had brown eyes, a thick gold earring in one ear, and had 2 tails, ending in white tips. She also had white socks. Yukari presented Haley the cat, holding it under its front paws. Haley, this is Chen, Chen, this is Haley. A cat, Haley said, not sure whether to be disappointed or not. Not just any cat, a Yukai cat. Yukari said, dropping the cat and stifling another yawn. She will keep you company for the time being, and while you are at it, Chen, Haley is new to the whole being a Yukai. So be a dear and show her the ropes. The cat meows loudly. Haley wonders if that was confirmation or refusal. Good, said Yukari, yawning again and without further notice starts climbing into the still open gap. Be good to each other and yawn, I'll see you in spring. Yukari sort of tumbles in, and the gap closes behind her. Ran stares blankly at the sofa. When she had left the room, her Shikigami had been dosing there. When she had returned, she now found her master in the exact same place, exact same posture, sleeping soundly. Chen was nowhere to be seen. I have many questions and no one to ask. Ran said flatly. It was tough sometimes, being Yukari's Shikigami. Haley just stared at where Yukari had been. Yukari had been the best thing to ever happen to Haley, and now that she was gone, she felt kind of empty. Haley prayed for winter to be over soon. Well, looks like we are on our own, came a voice from behind her, distracting her from her lament. He turned around to see the cat standing there, its brown eyes sizing her up. Before she could question her hearing, the cat seemed to shift. It suddenly grew and changed shape. Where there had been a cat, there now stood a 12-year-old girl in a red dress and green mob cap, and brown hair. She still had her cat ears though, and both tails. Well, like she said, name's Chen, I'm a Nekomata. Yukari's my boss, in a way. More of my boss's boss, to be honest. But still, at your service. Haley right. Chen extended a hand. Haley took it slowly as if expecting claws. Yeah, how did you do that? Chen cocked her head. You really are pretty new to this, aren't you? I am a Nekomata, I'm technically more cat than anything else. There's no real, how, I just can. Oh, said Haley, feeling awkward. Yukari said I gotta teach you how to be a Yukai, there's the first lesson, don't question so much, just go with the flow. Chen said. Yukai mostly run off belief, fear and magic, so not everything tends to make sense. Haley said. Could I learn to do something like that? Chen grinned. Now there's a question worth asking, and one I don't know the answer to. But still, stick with me and I'll show you what being a Yukai is all about. Okay, said Haley. She still missed Yukari, but Chen seems alright. Right, first off, harassing humans. Chen said, throwing her hands in the air. Exclaimed Haley, before she was dragged off by the hand. Damn it, where is everybody? Chen said from her branch. Typical humans, never around when you want them. Well, it is winter. Most people are indoors, said Haley, crouching next to the small witchfire that Chen had summoned up to keep them warm in their position up the tree. Are you sure it's okay to do stuff like this? It feels kinda mean. Well, it is. That's the point, Chen said, as if that explained everything. But, this is lesson 2, humans exist to sustain and amuse us. I already knew this when I was a cat, but I guess since you used to be human this might take some getting used to. Chen said. Oh, someone's coming. Shush. A middle-aged man was wandering down the path, bundled up in a coat and clutching his briefcase to his chest. Just as he passed under the tree, Chen shouted, "Now!" They both jumped on the branches they had been squatting on, bringing down a whole heap of snow on the poor man's head. Chen cackled as she hopped down from her branch, landing on the new pile of snow on the footpath, before sprinting off on all fours. Haley slid down the tree and struggled to catch up just as the man's head surfaced. "You damn kids. Wait until I get my hands on you," the man shouted as he attempted to extract himself from the snow. By the time he had succeeded, Haley and Chen were long gone. "What did I tell ya? Priceless," said Chen, still giggling as she reclined on the park bench that the two now inhabited. "He sounded really mad," said Haley between breaths, nowhere near Chen's level of fitness. "Once more. That's the point," Chen said. If there was no reaction, what would be the point? Haley took a moment to catch her breath. "I kind of feel sorry for him. I mean, snow isn't that fun to be covered in." "Ah, you are still too nice." Chen groaned loudly. "Part of being a Yukai is making humans suffer. If you are gonna feel bad about a little frostbite, how are you gonna get anything done?" "Sorry," Haley said sadly. She had just made Chen mad. No, don't worry, clearly I'm taking the wrong approach here," said Chen, pinching the bridge of her nose. "I thought accosting random people would be a safe place to start. But seems you need more incentive to be nasty." Chen stopped to think for a moment, before making a face of realization. "Hey, is there anyone you hate, I mean really hate? Someone you wouldn't mind suffering?" It was dark out by the time they arrived. Chen jumped from lamppost to lamppost, carrying Haley under her arm, before jumping to a third-story window. "Well, this is the place," Chen said, dropping Haley on the windowsill. "A hospital, huh? Geez, you must have done a number on his arm." Haley stood looking into the window. Chen had somehow been able to locate Dudley by summoning some sort of wisp. But Haley had a strange feeling. Wiping the frost with her hand, she could see the bed in the room beyond. She couldn't see who was in it. But she somehow knew it was Dudley. Chen turned Haley to face her. "Okay, now in there is the face of one of your childhood tormentors. Forget that stupid human empathy crap, and do it like we practiced. You are gonna scare the ever-loving shit. I think I can do it," Haley said, feeling strangely calm about the whole situation. Chen seemed to falter at the interruption, but rallied. "Well, I'll be just out here if you need me. If things get hairy, I'll provide backup." She coated her hand in witchfire and touched the lock on the window, before simply opening it. "Go get him," she whispered as Haley stepped forward. A cold gust accompanied Haley's entrance, and it seemed to stir Dudley from his sleep. "Woo, who's there?" he said sleepily. "Hello cousin, how's your arm?" Haley said, stepping forward. "Huh, what, you?" he said, suddenly very awake. At one point she and Chen had practiced a loose script on what to say at this point. But as she continued to walk forward, it was forgotten as a tiny switch in Haley's head went click. "Tell me Dudley, did it hurt? Did it? You were in so much trouble, you know. Daddy said he is going to make you very sorry for what you did," and then, Dudley said. "But I wonder, did it hurt enough?" Haley ponders, cutting Dudley off. "Huh," said Dudley, not used to her talking back. "You have hurt me a lot over the years, you know." Haley said, still slowly walking toward the bed. "One has to wonder, was one bite even enough?" What do you mean?" Dudley asked, his voice shaking. "I think you know exactly what I mean," Haley said, stopping at the edge of the bed. "How many bites will it take before I can forgive you? Will there even be any Dudley left by the time I'm done? Mom and Dad are in just the other room, I can call them and then you will be in big trouble," said Dudley, fear made audible by the trembling in his voice. Haley loved it. "Good," Haley said. "I want them to hurt too, I want you to all hurt." And Haley started to slowly circle the bed, and singing a little rhyme that popped up into her head. "I am a little monster. I don't know right from wrong. If you had treated me better, we might have got along." As she reached the foot of the bed, her voice started becoming layered, becoming more sinister with every verse. "But now whenever I see you, I will spit and screech. And now we will see if you have a heart. When I rip it out with my teeth. Petunia and Vernon Dursley awoke with a start when they hear a scream from in the room. They burst into a figure standing on the foot of Dudley's bed. As he cowered on the headboard. "Mommy, Daddy, it's," stuttered Dudley, pointing with his one good arm. The figure turned to them, and bright green eyes glowed like lanterns in the darkness. "Hello Uncle, Auntie. You," Vernon snarled, launching himself at her. But in a surprising show of dexterity, Haley avoided the clumsy grab with a backflip and landed in front of the window, silhouetted by the moonlight. "Missed me," she said, giggling. "Stay away from him, you little monster," Petunia said, draping herself over Dudley's shivering form. "That's right Auntie, I'm a monster now," said Haley. Her multifaceted voice making her giggle even more creepy. "And I'm so hungry, and Dudley tasted so good. Won't you let me have another bite?" Even her teeth seemed to shine as she smiled, showing her new jagged fangs. "You step 1 foot closer, and all," said Vernon, standing between the bed and Haley. But even he was frightened. This was not the scared little girl from before. This was something dangerous, and Vernon's animal instincts were telling him to run, that in front of him is a predator. "Oh no, my big scary uncle is here. Whatever will I do?" Haley said, in mock worry. "But, maybe I will leave now, it seems a shame to end things now, not when there is so much more fun to be had." She turned her back on them to face the window. "Goodbye Dursleys, I'll be back Tilda." And she cackled. And cackled. Even as she vaulted over the window the cackling continued, slowly fading into the night, only to continue in their nightmares for years to come. Chen Man, aged to catch the cackling Haley as she fell past, and quickly carried her away. Jumping away on the lamp posts until they were a block away, and Haley was out of breath. Chen didn't trust herself to speak until then. She landed on a rooftop, and enthusiastically hugged Haley to her chest, twirling on the spot. "Ha ha ha, that was incredible. I didn't know what to think when you started going off script, but you are a natural. That felt so good," Haley said, breathing heavily, and grinning like a girl possessed. "I bet it did," said Chen, falling backwards with Haley on her lap and ruffling her hair. "I almost forgot you were a beginner. You got a knack for being creepy. Just start channeling that and you'll be a grade A Yukai before Yukari even wakes up." All of Haley's doubt or hesitation was gone by that point, buried under the fearborn high that she had milked from her former family. This was probably the point where human Haley fully died, and Yukai Haley was truly born. "Yeah, I'm gonna be the bestest Yukai ever." Chen laughed and rubbed Haley's head again. "Yeah, you keep telling yourself that," she said, getting up. "Come on, all that fear made me hungry. Let's rob a convenience store and get home before the high runs out." Haley didn't even question it. "Yeah, I want a Slurpee. In winter, I want a Slurpee. Okay, let's go find a 7-Eleven. Ah, this is the life," said Chen, chugging a massive bottle of cola. Haley mumbled, her mouth full of ice cream. They were in what was previously a sitting room, but currently housed about half the bedding in the house, which was used to create what could only be described as a pillow palace. There, both Haley and Chen lounged around near a fireplace full of witchfire, and occasion allies sampled snacks from their stolen hoard. Haley could only imagine how jealous Dudley would be of her now if he could see. "Man, the outside world is great sometimes," Chen said. Haley stopped ovaling ice cream in her mouth long enough to look at Chen questioningly. "Outside world? You mean Yukari didn't tell you about Gensokyo?" Chen said, tilting her head. "Gensokyo is where we come from, it's a place in Japan. It's sort of a sanctuary for Yukai. Basically when all the humans started getting superational and stuff, and stopped believing in magic and crap. It meant all the Yukai started getting weaker and fading away. So then Yukari and a few other powerful Yukai, as well as a shrine maiden all got together in an out-of-the-way valley in Japan and put up a huge barrier, to keep all the magic in. And then a second barrier to draw in all the magic people don't believe in anymore to sustain it. And that's where most Yukai live these days. It's a pretty cool place, and I'm much more powerful in there than out here. But the outside world can be pretty fun too, to those who can survive being outside the barrier at least, like you and me." "That sounds pretty neat," Haley said, liking the idea of meeting lots of Yukai. Can I go there? To be honest, I'm not sure why you aren't there already. Chen said. Usually when Yukari finds Youkai she likes, she brings them to Gensokyo as soon as she can. Oh, said Haley, thinking, does that mean Yukari doesn't like me? Nah, said Chen dismissively, opening a bag of crisps. If she didn't like you she wouldn't have wasted this much time on you. She probably has her reasons. Ask her when you see her next spring. Okay, said Haley, doubts assuaged. Hey, give me some of that. Get your own, we got plenty, Chen said, moving the crisps out of Haley's reach. Fine, grumbled Haley, doing as she was told. To be honest, I'm not in a hurry to get back right now, Chen said, throwing a handful of crisps into her mouth. Why not? Think about it. We are alone in a massive house that no one can find uninvited without powerful magic. No one knows we are here except Yukari, and she probably fell asleep the moment she got back. So probably not even Ran knows where I am yet. I rarely get to go to the outside world without oversight, so this is a rare opportunity for me to cut loose for a bit. As long as I don't go overboard, I can get away with nearly anything, is what you were going to say, am I correct? You severely underestimate my ability to find my own Shikigami, Chen, said a voice by the door. Chen sprung to her feet with a yowl, and turned to face the new figure. Oh, hey Ran. Good evening Chen, I take it you are enjoying yourself, said the tall woman. Haley couldn't help but stare at the mass of fox tails behind her. Oh well you see I was, Yukari. Chen started, but Ran cut her off. No need to explain, Yukari-sama was kind enough to leave a note under her hat explaining the situation. Oh, well, yeah I'm just showing little Haley how to be a proper Yukai, Chen said proudly. And what part of being proper Yukai involves lying around, stuffing your face with snack food? Ran said, raising an eyebrow. Well, Chen said, shuffling her foot awkwardly, we were hungry. Ran sighed. One day Chen, I will instill you with good work ethic. But for now there is another matter. Ran approached Haley, and she struggles to her feet, wondering if she was also in trouble. But Ran smiled and bowed respectfully. I am Ran Yakumo. I am Yukari-sama's Shikigami, and Chen's master. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. You too, Haley said, bowing awkwardly in return. I must say, Yukari has high hopes for you young Haley. Ran said, making Haley blush. But your potential needs to be nurtured, and while I am sure that Chen has done a respectable job of educating you in general Yukai matters. Chen recovered from her awkward moment and puffed out her chest at the almost praise. There is more to being Yukai than mere mischief-making. If you wish to truly make something of yourself, your mind will have to be nurtured, as well as your body. Chen can help you with the latter. But for the former, Yukari has instructed me to act as your academic tutor. You mean a teacher? Haley said. Quite. But apart from that, I will also be monitoring your well-being. So if you ever have any problems, feel free to ask. I am here to help. She reached down and ruffled her hair. People were doing that a lot to her lately. She was really starting to like it. Ran straightened up. For now though it is time for good girls to go to bed. We will discuss your curriculum tomorrow. She then looks around at the surroundings, although it looks like you have brought bed in here first. Chen said, rubbing the back of her neck. But I'm not tired, Haley said, pouting. Considering you seem to have inhaled enough sugar to be lethal, I'm not surprised. Ran said, sighing. Let's see how to remedy this. There was a flurry of tails and Haley found herself laying down with her back against a large golden nine-tailed fox with a mob cap. She was slightly alarmed at the shift. But then the tails draped over her like a blanket, and she suddenly felt sleepy. Shush, said Ran, in her fox form. Just a little bit of fox magic. Sleep soundly, and have good dreams. Okay, said Haley, her eyelids drooping. Chen gave a knowing grin. Save some room for me. She shifted into her cat form and climbed on top of Ran, curling up into a little cat ball, falling asleep nearly instantly. Ran smiled as much as a fox could. She was often accused by others of her kind of being a big softie, and at times like this found it hard to refute. There was the sound of a camera going off. And Ran lifted her head, to see Yukari leaning on the doorframe. You're supposed to be asleep, Ran said, matter-of-factly. And miss something this adorable, said Yukari, smiling weakly. Without further ado, She slowly staggered across the room, before dropping down and curling up against Ran, draping her arms around her neck. "Good night, Ran." Ran brought her head around onto Yukari's lap. "Good night, Yukari." It was good thing Ran had magic, or otherwise there would have been no one to take the picture of this scene. While it was difficult being the most consistent, sensible person in the Yakumo household, moments like this are why Ran loves her job. Haley woke with a start as something slapped the table. Ran shook her head. "Haley, please pay attention, history is important. As is having a well-rounded education." Haley shook her head to get rid of the mental cobwebs. But why is she allowed to sleep?" Haley whined, pointing at Chen, who was comfortably dozing in a puddle of her own drool. "Because I know how to pick my battles," said Ran simply. "She's just going to have it rough when I test you on this next week." Haley squeaked. "A test? Don't worry, I'm making it easy," Ran said, going back to the blackboard. "At least for those who pay attention." Haley looks down at Chen, and wonders if she should help her prepare. "And don't even think of helping her. It will invalidate the whole point of the test," Ran said. "Well, sorry Chen, I tried," thought Haley sympathetically. Despite her usually calm and caring demeanor, Ran was a totally merciless teacher. Especially with Chen. Yukari always said it was because of her caring nature, as she wants those she teaches to succeed, but it was hard to take comfort in that when staring down all those names, places and dates. It was enough to make Haley's little head spin. As if sensing Haley's distress, Ran's face softened. She walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know history is a poor subject for you. But you are a clever girl. I wouldn't do this if I didn't think you could." "I guess," Haley said, but Ran could see her coming around. Ran knew from experience that Haley responded well to positive reinforcement and poorly to negative. So Ran made sure to set her consistent, achievable milestones in her learning, compliment her when she did well, and build her up when she was having difficulty. As opposed to Chen. With her, too much positive reinforcement made her complacent and lazy, so she occasionally needed to mix a stick in with the carrot every now and then. Like a surprise test, for example. Chen needed to be kept on her toes. Teaching both of them was quite a challenge, especially when they are on different levels for different subjects, but Ran believed it to be a rewarding experience. Ran decided to give her a little extra push. "Also, I believe Yukari-sama might be dropping in later today. Why don't you try to impress her with how hard you are working?" Haley sat upright and looked to the blackboard, the model of the perfect student. Another easily exploitable character trait she had developed was an almost worrying devotion to Yukari. It's understandable considering how terrible her life was before Yukari, but sometimes Ran worries that if Yukari told her to jump off a cliff, she would with a smile. Not that Ran wouldn't, but it's the principle of the thing. "Good girl, let's get this over with, and I promise, the next history lesson will be some Yukai biographies." Oh, can we do mailing next?" Haley said, suddenly genuinely engaged. "I'll have to ask her. But we will see," Ran said, chuckling, before resuming her lesson. "Yukari-sama," said Haley, immediately launching herself at the Yukai sage the minute she gapped in. "Well, hello to you too," Yukari said, chuckling and returning the embrace. She turned to Ran. "Not interrupting anything, am I?" "No, we were just finishing," Ran said, wiping the chalkboard. "Haley has been working hard today." "Is that a fact?" Yukari said, ruffling Haley's hair. "Good girl." Hee tilde, Haley cooed happily. "I was just on my way out. Chen and I have some business to take care of. How long will you be visiting?" Ran said, gently shaking Chen awake. "Maybe an hour or two," Yukari said, putting Haley down. "I need to see to Reimu's training today. I think the girl's been slacking again." "Reimu again?" Haley pouted. "You're always seeing to her training." "That's because Reimu is hopelessly slack," Yukari said. "You are reliable enough that you don't need as much oversight." But I want oversight." Haley whined. It really wasn't fair in Haley's mind. Just because she worked hard, she got less attention. But if she didn't work hard, she wouldn't get praised. A tricky dilemma for the attention-loving 9-year-old. My, such a needy child. Yukari tight-read. "Whatever will I do with you?" Haley pondered the rhetorical question, before coming up with her own solution. "Why don't you take me with you?" "Now Haley, we've been over this," Yukari lightly scolded, bopping Haley on the head with a fan. I know, I can't go live in Gensokyo until I'm ready. Haley said, downcast. But she rallied. But can't I at least visit? Please. I'll be good, and I'll do exactly as I'm told. Just for a bit. Pretty please. Well, I don't know, said Yukari, feigning reluctance. But she was smiling behind her fan. Please. Tilda, Haley said, giving the biggest puppy dog eyes she could imagine. Oh, very well then. Let's go introduce you to Reimu. Yukari said. Yay. Haley cheered. To be honest, Yukari had been planning to introduce Haley to Reimu for a long time, but Haley was just so cute when she thought she had accomplished something. Haley followed Yukari out of the gap and onto a stone path leading up to a Shinto shrine. The shrine stood in the middle of a large clearing, on what appeared to be the top of a large hill, if the long steps behind her were anything to go by. It had a serene sense of peace and natural beauty that made Haley, a born Londoner, feel out of place. But the most overwhelming part was the magic that lay thick in the air. It was like a sound she had been hearing all her life, to the point where she no longer noticed it, had suddenly gotten louder and gained a string accompaniment. It almost overloaded poor Haley's magic-deprived senses. She clutched onto the back of Yukari's dress, taking comfort in her familiar magic, as she was led down the path towards the shrine. Reimu, I hope you are presentable. I have company Tilda, Yukari said. Having switched to Japanese. Lucky Yukari had made Haley fluent before arriving. The paper door of the shrine opened a smidgen, and a small girl poked her head around it, before opening it all the way. Reimu wasn't really what Haley had been expecting. Yukari had always built her up as something larger than life, someone who held the future of Gensokyo in her hands. As it happens, what confronted her was a girl probably not that much older than her, in an ill-fitting Miko dress and a giant red ribbon in her hair that was probably bigger than her head. She looked kinda scruffy, like she didn't pay too much attention to her appearance. Her expression was that of grumpy indifference. I didn't know you were coming today, Yukari, the girl said accusingly. If I told you when I was coming you'd never be here. Yukari said cheerily. I have plans today, she said, looking at the door longingly, as if wishing she could just close it on Yukari's face. And what plans might that be? Yukari said. Yo Reimu, who's there? Came a voice from behind her, and another girl of roughly the same age came into view. If Reimu was what Haley considered scruffy, this girl went way beyond that. With multicolored stains running down the frilly apron she wore, a black dress that seemed to be decorated by patches of soot, several band-aids adorning her face and hands, and her mess of blonde hair was crowned by an oversized witch's hat. But what overshadowed all of that was her massive grin. It was clear that nothing got this girl down no matter how hard you might try. She stopped behind Reimu and looked Yukari up and down, before recognition dawned. Oh, you're the Gap Youkai that Reimu is always complaining about. Hi, I'm Marissa, nice to meet ya. Ah, Marissa, I have heard of you. Yukari said. And indeed she had, for Marissa was an oddity even in the world of Gensokyo. She had run away from the human village a few years ago, with the aspiration of becoming a magician. And had taken up in an abandoned shack in the forest of magic. With nothing but a few stolen books and no background or natural talent in magic, or even an ability for that matter, most people considered that would be where the story ended. But little Marissa had not only survived, but thrived. What she lacked in natural talent she made up for in tenacity and hard work. Her magic, while crude, had managed to protect her from even the most rowdy of the forest's Youkai. She practically lived off the various strange mushrooms that the forest offered, carefully cataloging their effects, and using them to her advantage. Indeed, her survival had been so impressive that she had attracted the attention of a local vengeful spirit and powerful magician, who had offered her an apprenticeship, and since then her magical skill had exploded. Indeed, she had through sheer hard work and determination brought her to a level nearing Reimu, one of the most powerful of her bloodline, and Marissa was still only a human. To say Yukari was impressed would have been an understatement. She hadn't known her and Reimu were friends though, a rather interesting development to be sure. But Gap Youkai, I have a name, I'll have you know. Yukari said teasingly. Or doesn't Reimu use it when I'm not around? Marissa was unmoved. Hey, it's better than what Mema-sensei calls you, she calls you a Gap Ha. Finish that sentence and I will end you. Yukari said, all traces of humor gone. All right, calm down, it's only a joke. Marissa said, waving dismissively, seemingly not the least bit threatened. Who's the squirt? Reimu cut in, having noticed Haley peering from around Yukari. I'm not a squirt, I'm 9 years old. Haley said defensively. 9 or not, you are still short. Reimu said flatly. This unfortunately was true. Haley's growth had been severely stunted by her treatment as a child, and her transformation into a Yukai from such a young age may be slowing it down further, not that Haley will admit it. I'm not short. You're just tall. She shot back angrily. Now settle down, Yukari said soothingly. Haley pouted and looked at the ground angrily. Yukari patted her on the head. This is Haley Potter, a Yukai from England I have been looking after for a few years. She wanted to accompany me on this excursion. Be nice Reimu, this is her first time in Gensokyo, and she might live here one day. No way. From the outside, from Europe. Marissa exclaimed, getting right in Haley's face. That's so neat. I didn't think there were that many Yukai out there. Said Haley, leaning back. Her almost total lack of socialization up until now biting her in the ass. Luckily Yukari was there to pick up the slack. They are a rare breed for sure, but it can happen, alt. Huff they tend not to last long on their own. What kind is she? Marissa asked. I'm a Yukai of grudge, I think. Haley offered. There had been much debate among the Yakumos about what exactly Haley was. She shared some passing resemblance to a magician Yukai, with her enhanced magic and her lack of reliance of food and sleep, until you got to her flesh cravings and sharp teeth, which magicians don't have. She also seems to react strongly to negative emotions, especially when directed at others. It has been generally agreed that she is an uncategorized Yukai with some power over negative interpersonal relationships. Or simplified, a Yukai of grudge. Yukai of grudge huh? Not to disagree but you look a bit too friendly for that. Marissa said. Haley lifted her fringe to show off her scar, and smiled to show her teeth. Definitely more convincing. Marissa said. What's the scar all about? Reimu said. Were you born with that? Yukari said I got it when my parents were murdered. Haley said. She didn't notice but she had been steadily moving out from behind Yukari, being slowly affected by the pair's bizarre charisma. You were told. Reimu said. I'm pretty sure you'd remember something like that, I sure did. Quote. I was only 1 at the time. Haley said, shrugging. Well if your parents were murdered, I can certainly understand why you might be a Yukai of grudge. Reimu said. Haley shook her head. No. That guy's dead apparently. Somehow I killed him as an infant. That's pretty metal. Marissa said. Quote. I think it had a bit more to do with who I ended up with afterwards. My uncle and aunt hated my guts. And treated me like garbage, keeping me in a cupboard under the stairs, half-starving me. Stuff like that. Yikes. Marissa said. I know right. Haley said. That's why I've been basically haunting them since I became a Yukai. I'm trying to see if I can drive any of them to an early grave or the madhouse through stress and fear. There was a small silence. I take back what I said. You are definitely a Yukai of grudge. Marissa said. Thank you. Haley said, giggling. Now that introductions are done, I believe you and I have some business to attend to. Yukari said, giving a meaningful look at Reimu, before leading her away from Haley and Marissa, who had begun their own conversation. I have been told you have been shirking practice. I've been busy. Reimu said, sulking. And what could be more important than learning your proper duties as a Hakare shrine maiden? Yukari said. Because what has all this stuff got to do with anything? Wah. Have all the dances and ceremonies got to do with protecting people? Said Reimu, defiantly. Everything. Those ceremonies are about honoring the gods of this land and your shrine. You may have a lot of spiritual power and a powerful ability, but you need the gods' tools and blessings in order to channel them. That's how it's always been for the Hakares, and you are no different. But I can already do my job. I've already done my first extermination. Reimu said, still defiant. Yukari paused. You have. Well you shouldn't. I haven't even taught you proper sealing or exercising techniques, how do you know they are properly? I didn't need any of that, Reimu said making a face, I just beat her up until she said she was sorry. Quote. She said she was sorry. Yukari said, raising her eyebrow. Yeah, Reimu said, obviously proud of herself, I just beat her up a bunch and then she said she wouldn't harass the guy's rice field anymore. I got a whole bag of rice for my trouble. So it wasn't a proper extermination at all. It seems a farmer was just trying to take advantage of the young and naive shrine maiden to get rid of a bothersome Yukai. But still, Reimu, in this job, there are Yukai who ignore the rules of Gensokyo and threaten its balance. There are times when you might have to deal with a problem, terminally. Why? Said Reimu, just because they are bad I gotta be bad too. No way. I'm not going to be a murderer, I'll just make them really sorry. Yukari stared down at the tiny shrine maiden. It seems the death of Reimu's mother had affected her more than Yukari initially thought. She seems to have developed a strong aversion to killing, even Yukai, which many humans are perfectly willing to treat as subhuman. Such Yukai empathy would often be discouraged in the Hakare clan. They are meant as the equalizer in Gensokyo after all, something to protect the weak humans from the powerful Yukai. She really should curb this kind of thinking. But on the other hand, Yukari thought privately. The old way wasn't really working anyway, perhaps it's time to try a new way, perhaps one with less dead shrine maidens. Yukari smirked. You know what, you should just forge your own path. Yukari said. I suppose it's not really in the place of a Yukai to tell a shrine maiden her job. I was doing that anyway. Reimu said, crossing her arms, I don't need your permission. Of course you don't, said Yukari, but that still doesn't mean you can get away with shirking your training. But I have plans today. Reimu exclaimed angrily. You still haven't told me what these plans are yet. Yukari said. I fail to see what could be more important. Hey Reimu, Marissa said, running up, dragging Haley by the hand, are you done talking about boring stuff? Hi, Marissa seemed to struggle with Haley's name for a minute before settling on. Hai-chan wants to see Danmaku. Danmaku, Yukari said. She turned to Reimu, who was now avoiding eye contact. Yeah, it's a new game me and Reimu made up. Marissa said, you basically fire off as many projectiles as possible to try and hit your opponent, while avoiding your opponent's projectiles as they try and do the same thing. It's really fun, and Mema-sensei says it's good training for evasion, split focus and battle control. We were just getting ready for a game when you showed up. Is that so? Said Yukari, giving Reimu a sideways glance. Reimu was trying and failing to whistle nonchalantly. Please Yukari-sama, Haley pleaded. Yukari thought about it. She is a little curious after all, and it would be interesting to see how Reimu spends her time. You know what? I think I might like to see as well. Marissa and Reimu stood some distance apart in the area behind the main shrine building. Both staring each other down confidently. While Yukari and Haley stood on the back steps of the shrine watching. SWR Hakare Shrine Theme. The ground's color is yellow. Okay, 1 2 3 GO. Marissa shouted, sweeping her hands in front of her, creating an arc of multicolored stars that shot towards Reimu. Reimu with almost effortless grace, sidestepped the first one and squeezed between another two. She then conjured a handful of square papers, and sent them flying with a flick of her wrist. They flew up in an arc before coming down to target Marissa. Marissa jumped back and the first one landed at her feet. And was forced to start cartwheeling backwards, as they honed into her position. Halfway through a cartwheel she dropped a bunch of small bottles out of her apron that exploded into more colorful projectiles. That honed into Reimu's position, making her dive sideways to avoid them. From that point the battle escalated, with more and more projectiles flying in strange patterns and behaviors. With the two combatants darting around, ducking, jumping and dancing through the sea of bullets that flew in every direction. Haley was mesmerized by the color and movement. Yukari on the other hand, was mesmerized for an entirely different reason. To another observer one might assume it to be a random and chaotic mess, but she could see the underlying purpose. The strange patterns, varying bullet speeds. Homing projectiles hurting them into other positions to be exposed to more projectiles, misleading aimed attacks to create more room to maneuver and counter-attack. There was 100 subtle mind games being played between the two girls. This was a game of pure strategy and skill. There was power here, but it was tame, controlled. What's more, there wasn't a drop of killing intent in either combatants. It was beautiful. Back in the fight however, Reimu was in a pinch. She had been caught in between two streams of bullets, and Marissa was grinning. Gotcha! Marissa cried, before leveling a small octagonal block at Reimu. And a large multicolored laser erupted from it. Then Reimu jumped it, and she didn't come down either. Hey! Marissa shouted, no fair. I don't remember ever agreeing not to fly. Reimu said defiantly, and what's with you bringing out the Hakuro? Last time you burned a great big hole in my skirt. I've gotten under control this time. Marissa said defensively. But you know I can't fly that well yet. Well, tough luck, I'm through playing nice. If you wanna bring out the big guns then so will I. Reimu said, and two large red and white yin-yang patterned spheres appeared by her side, spinning on the spot. Dodge this. Marissa yelped and jumped into the air, as some similarly patterned blue and white shares cannoned into the ground where she stood, sending up dust. From there the battle continued in the air, although Marissa seemed to be having more difficulty than Reimu. Having gone defensive in order to focus on dodging. It seems that it's still a work in progress. Yukari thought, both slightly disappointed and mildly amused. Haley on the other hand, was awed. There, flying. Yukari cast her a glance, observing her wonder-filled expression. Indeed they are. It's amazing, they are actually flying. Haley said. You could do that too, you know. Yukari said. Haley's head turned to Yukari with a snap, her attention stolen from the airborne battle. I have a feeling I might be starting your magic tuition soon. It seems Reimu needs me less than I thought. Yukari said, watching the young shrine maiden float through the sky. She's already managed to summon the yin-yang orbs, her power and ability are growing quickly, even without my intervention. Maybe it would be safe to start taking a backseat. Really? Haley was beside herself with joy. Yukari would be teaching her magic soon, and more importantly Yukari would be paying her more attention. Of course, but not now. I am quite interested to see how this ends. I advise you watch too. Haley did as she was told, just in time to see Marissa barely avoiding one of Reimu's large orb attacks, the air ruffling her skirt as it passed. Whoa, ready to give up yet? Reimu taunted. Not on your life. I still got one trick up my sleeve. Marissa said, rummaging in her pocket. They aren't perfect yet, but allow me to unveil my latest invention. He LD aloft a small rectangular piece of card. The spell card. Take this. Magic sign tilde starbomb. There was a loud booming noise, and stars of every shape, size and speed shot out in an expanding chaotic dome. Reimu backed off in surprise before desperately dodging the storm of stars. She wasn't quick enough however, and after a minute of weathering the attack a fist-sized star smacked her in the face, sending her careening into the ground. Yes, I win, said Marissa, cutting off the attack, and slowly lowering to the ground. When she arrived she was met with an utterly livid Reimu. What the hell was that? Reimu shouted in her face. Indeed I am quite curious myself, said Yukari, walking over, Haley trailing behind. That was quite a complex spell to unleash in such a short time. I already said Marissa, holding out another card. These are my spell cards. They basically allow you to quickly use a prepared spell at a moment's notice. They are kind of a work in progress, and there is a limit to how much magic I can cram into a single card. But the results speak for themselves, wouldn't you agree, Reimu? How is anyone supposed to avoid that attack? I couldn't even see you through the stars. Reimu said angrily. Girls, may I have a moment? Yukari said. Both bickering girls turned to look at her. I must say, I'm quite taken by this little game of yours, but may I make a few suggestions on how it must be improved? Perhaps some observations from the perspective of a spectator. She took their silence as consent. First, from observing, I believe that it is probably best fought in the air, as it creates both more opportunities for attack and evasion, and is far more pleasing to the eye. Reimu looked rather smug at that, while Marissa looked kinda annoyed. But I also quite like the idea of these spell cards. I believe that they might be an opportunity for further beauty. Reimu looked angry again, and looked like she was going to retort. But Yukari cut her off. Provided that they can be used by everybody, and as Reimu pointed out, that spell card was practically impossible to avoid. Some effort should be made to ensure fair play, by making sure the cards can be avoided with sufficient skill. Perhaps a time limit as well. Marissa rubbed the back of her neck. Well, it is a prototype, but I get what you mean. Good, you should make an effort to have your spell cards both meaningful and beautiful, rather than just spamming projectiles. This will make the battle satisfying to all involved. Question. Reimu said, why are you insisting on beauty? It's just a game, not a performance. It might not be a performance, said Yukari, smiling, but it was probably the most beautiful thing I have seen in a long, long time. Marissa puffed out her chest proudly, while Reimu rubbed the back of her neck, clearly embarrassed. Said Haley, drawing everyone's attention. I think that was really pretty too, and, I mean, I haven't started my magic training yet. But, could I maybe learn how to play? Marissa and Reimu looked at each other before shrugging. Sure, why not? Reimu said. I mean, I've been teaching some of my Yukai friends in the forest, so I don't see why not. Marissa said. Haley beamed and bowed quickly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, settle down. Marissa said, laughing. First things first, let's see if you can conjure a bullet. Yukari watched Haley and her two new friends, and considered the future of Gensokyo. A human magician who considers Yukai her friends and a shrine maiden who treats Yukai just like she treats everyone else. Within the two, she saw a very interesting future indeed. She could hardly wait. Are you sure of this, Minerva? Dumbledore said from behind his desk. I have looked, but it is clear that Ms. Potter has not lived in Privet Drive for a number of years, and I can find no trace of her. Either she is being hidden by some powerful magic, or, Minerva McGonagall trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. I see. Dumbledore went deep into thought for a moment, before speaking again. I do not believe Ms. Potter is dead. We shall try a messenger owl, very few things are hidden from them. But I believe something is afoot, follow it as long as you are able. I do hope you are right, Albus, I do hope you are right. It seems things are finally moving. Yukari said, taking a sip of her tea. About time too. Remelia huffed. I was beginning to wonder if I would have to add another century to my age before anything developed. Come Remelia, don't be sour. I think this will prove most entertaining for both of us, said Yukari. Let us see where Haley's destiny will take us. Professor McGonagall stood just across the street, and grimaced at the building before her. The old Victorian townhouse was dark and foreboding, even in the peak of summer. It stood out, its crimson bricks a completely alien presence in this otherwise normal corner of London. It extruded a dark malice. It was also incredibly hard to focus on, like it didn't want to be seen. The muggles walking past were completely oblivious to its presence, and McGonagall had a feeling she might have looked it over too, had it not been for a messenger owl leading her there. But now that they were here, and they had noticed it, the house seemed to be doing everything in its power to make them regret doing so. Like some great dragon that had been disturbed in its slumber. The owl was visibly spooked, sitting on a nearby parking meter, refusing to get any closer to the house than it already had. McGonagall decided to release it of its duty by taking the letter from its claw. It gave McGonagall a grateful look before flying off. McGonagall, however, had seen too much in her life to be frightened by a simple house. No matter how foreboding, she crossed the street, and checked the plate by the gate. It had no number, but old and worn letters spelled out the name Scarlet. Working her way through the overgrown garden to the front door, which was miraculously clear despite the growth all about it, suggesting frequent passage. She knocked on the door and waited. No response could be heard through the thick oak doors. McGonagall tried the handle. The door was unlocked, and swung effortlessly, albeit with a loud creak. The inside was pitch black, no windows or lights could be seen. She took some hesitant steps in. There were no traps as far as she could see. The door slammed behind her. She turned around and tried the handle. It was still open, she wasn't locked in. McGonagall forced herself to calm down. Some simple magical theatrics, nothing more. She turned back into the room and lifted her wand. Lumos. The tip of her wand lit up, illuminating the room. This was clearly a grand house once, but had clearly been under disuse for many years, as dust seemed to cover everything. Almost everything, as she spotted a trail through the dust in the center of the room, once more suggesting frequent passage. TT led from the door, to up some stairs in the foyer. McGonagall, thinking this her best bet to locating the missing Potter, she followed them. The trail led her to the third floor, and immediately, she could tell someone lived here. There was those Muggle electric lights illuminating the long corridor, and an open window on the far end, allowing McGonagall to extinguish her wand. There was at least a moderate attempt to clean this floor, half-hearted as it was, with little piles of dust in the corners, or poking out from under the corners of rugs. There was also a black cat sitting some distance down the hallway, watching her. McGonagall knew enough to be wary. Even if you disregard her own abilities, cats are the common companions of witches and wizards, and many magics had been made to augment this. Through those cat's eyes, someone else could easily be watching. She approached slowly. The cat was a curious little creature, wearing a little green mop cap, and had a ring piercing in its ear. As she drew nearer, it flicked its tail, and that's when McGonagall realized it had two. Meowed Tilda. The window at the far end of the corridor slammed shut, and the lights immediately went out, plunging the corridor into darkness. McGonagall was immediately on the defensive, gripping her wand tightly, unable to light her wand in case she needed it, simply hoping her eyes will adjust to the dark as she watched for attack. Giggles echoed in the dark. "Well, what have we here? Tilda," came a voice, strangely echoing so McGonagall couldn't pinpoint exactly where it came from. "I don't know, Chen. Seems like a guest." Tilda. Another voice, this one strangely layered, as if multiple people speaking slightly out of sync, all in different pitches, creating an eerie effect. "I wasn't expecting any guests, were you?" Tilda, the first voice spoke. McGonagall tried to pinpoint where it was. "Well, just because we weren't expecting her, doesn't mean we shouldn't give her a warm welcome." Tilda. "Pardon my intrusion," McGonagall said, attempting to reason with the voices, to at the very least buy time until she could figure out what she was dealing with. "I am hoping to deliver a message to someone. I have reason to believe she lives in this house." "Oh, someone in this house." "Not many people can claim that." Tilda, the first voice spoke again. "Indeed, the masters of this house have not been here for many, many years. Who could the letter be for, I wonder?" Tilda, the second voice added. McGonagall decided to go for the direct route. "I am here to see Haley Potter. I have a letter for her." And just like that, the dark suddenly lost its eerie quality, and the silence became awkward. "Oh," came the second voice, losing its ethereal quality, and McGonagall knew it was coming from right behind her. She turned around just as the light came on, and came face to face with the owner of the voice. It was a little girl, of indeterminate age, anywhere from 8 to 11. She wore a strange lacy dress with a petticoat that was at least thrice as wide as her torso. It was green and white to accent her eyes, which were brilliant emerald. Her sleeves were detached and secured somewhere beneath her shoulder, and had stripy stockings that disappeared under her skirt. She wore impractically large glasses, and a puffy green cap atop her artfully messy hair, with a single-side ponytail, tied with a small red ribbon. And behind her fringe, there was just the barest hint of a scar. "I got a letter," she said, confirming McGonagall's suspicions. "I didn't think anyone knew I lived here, at least no one who would send a letter like this." Quote, "Yeah, usually we get bats," came the first voice, behind her. She turned again. There was another colorfully dressed girl, this time red and green. But the cat ears with the piecing and the two tails left McGonagall with no doubt that this was the cat from before. "Where are you from, lady? I suppose I must introduce myself," McGonagall said, deciding to ignore the odd welcome and the strange cat girl, at least for now, as Miss Haley seemed to be in good health and unrestrained, despite her odd company. She turned back to Haley. "I am Professor McGonagall from the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. I came to give you your acceptance letter." She handed her the green envelope. "Hogwarts," said Haley, taking the letter. "Acceptance letter," said the cat girl, walking past McGonagall and positioning herself behind Haley to read over her shoulder. "I don't remember you applying to any schools." "Me neither," Haley said. McGonagall decided to explain. "The letter goes out to all children of a certain age with the capacity to perform magic, and your parents had intended for you to attend Hogwarts since you were born." "My parents, huh?" said Haley. "Did they go to this school too?" "Well, yes," McGonagall said. "Lily and James were two of my students back when they attended." "Huh, neat," Haley said, opening the envelope. "Yeah, your parents were magicians." "Who knew?" Chen said. "What's it say?" McGonagall wasn't quite sure how to feel about Haley's apparent total lack of interest in her parents, but decided to let it slide and let her read. "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry," Haley read aloud. "Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Sorc, CHF. Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confed of Wizards." "The hell's a Mugwump?" Chen said. I don't know, but apparently he's the best at it. Haley said, before continuing to read. Dear Ms. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on the 1st of September. We await your owl by no later than the 31st of July. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. Haley looked up. You're the Deputy Headmistress? Yes, that is me. McGonagall said. You must be pretty busy then, said the cat girl. Do you hand-deliver these to everyone, or were Haley's parents super big shots and she deserves special treatment? Haley puffed out her chest at that. She liked the idea of being important. Well, it is true Haley is a special case. Usually we deliver by owl. But in this case it was less the importance of her parents, although I did consider them close friends of mine, and more that you have proven extremely difficult to find. Oh, right, Haley sagged slightly, but then giggled. I guess I would be, huh? Might I ask why you are living here? By our records you are supposed to be living with your aunt and uncle. Haley's expression darkened, and the cat girl spoke in her stead. Haley, cut out the toxic influences in her life. She is not welcome there anymore, even if she wanted to go back. McGonagall realized this conversation would go south very quickly if she continued this line of discussion. Never mind, I'm sure you had your reasons. Who needs a family like that anyway? Haley huffed, seemingly calming down. Regardless, as the letter suggests, the term starts on the 1st of September, I would like a response as soon as possible. Although since I am here, I suppose I should just ask directly. Do you have a guardian I can speak to? Haley and the cat girl looked at each other. I mean yeah, I have one, Haley said, but she's not often here. I'm not sure you could meet her. Honestly, if she wanted to meet you, then she would already be here. Came a new voice once more from behind her. McGonagall sighed. It seemed people in this house had a flair for the dramatic. She turned around. Unlike Haley and the cat girl, this was a grown woman. Wearing a large purple dress, and pink mob cap, with a parasol slung over her shoulder, with long immaculate blonde hair. She had a mischievous glint in her violet eyes, not unlike Dumbledore, although this seemed slightly more predatory. There was an aura of age about her, despite her youthful appearance, almost ancient. Yukari, shouted Haley, running past McGonagall and throwing herself at the woman, who caught her and returned the hug. Hello Haley, have you been good? Yukari said. Nope, Haley said, beaming from ear to ear. Yukari ruffled her hair. Well, aren't you feeling cheeky today? If I may say, Haley has been performing admirably in her studies in the very least, said someone walking past McGonagall, who was getting seriously tired of people appearing behind her. The new woman stopped in front of her, and bowed respectfully. This woman was just as tall as McGonagall, but Who's height was further augmented by the animal ears under her mob cap. She also had a complete mess of fluffy animal tails behind her, maybe fox tails. McGonagall concluded that she was something similar to the cat girl, who was now standing behind the fox woman. Apologies for any confusion our sudden arrival may have caused. I am Ran Yakumo, Shikigami to Yukari Yakumo, the woman who arrived with me. She straightens up. We are Haley's guardians, and I am her personal tutor. She gestures to the cat girl, as she has not introduced herself yet. This is Chen Yakumo, my Shikigami. The cat girl bowed in mimicry of Ran. McGonagall didn't know what Shikigami was, but at her best guess it must be some sort of servant. Although a servant having a servant was rather unusual, and the shared surname was also odd. A pleasure to meet you, McGonagall said, returning the courtesy with a bow of her own. It paid to be respectful, especially in the house of another. I am Professor McGonagall of Hogwarts. From your timely appearance, I assume you have been listening. A fair assumption, Yukari said, joining the conversation alongside Ran, with Haley standing beside her. You wish for Hailey to attend this wizard school of yours, am I correct? Haley made a face, not liking the idea of going to school again. But this was largely ignored by everyone else. Yes, that is correct, McGonagall said. Term starts on the 1st of September. If you like I can show you where school supplies may be purchased, as well as the platform you must board to get to Hogwarts. Excuse me, Rand said, cutting off McGonagall. You speak as if Haley's attendance is a foregone conclusion. Haley looked up at Rand in hope. Now while I mean no disrespect to your institution, as Haley's tutor, I must make sure that your curriculum will be sufficiently academically challenging and rewarding for young Haley's intellectual development. Rand said. Haley cocked her head, trying to work out if she should be happy about that. I'm afraid I don't quite know what you mean, said McGonagall, not sure where the fox woman was going with this. Yukari held her fan to her face, trying to hide her urge to laugh. I understand that your school is most probably a specialist school, Rand began enthusiastically, and I am sure your magical curriculum is extensive. But I wish to know what you offer for your basic curriculum, literacy, philosophy, media studies, theology, the sciences, thaumaturgical metaphysics, home economics, but mostly mathematics and history as they are her weakest subjects. They would suffer greatly if neglected. She has a terrible memory for numbers after all, and judging by the fact that Yukari-sama is trying and failing to withhold laughter, I'm not going to like the answers, am I? Rand said, her enthusiasm flatlining. McGonagall looked the fox woman up and down, trying and failing to think of an answer to placate the woman, before deciding that there wasn't one, and going for the blunt truth. Ms. Yakumo, we consider a great deal of those things to be largely unnecessary to the majority of wizards. Hogwarts' curriculum is almost entirely magic-based. As a long pregnant silence aside from Yukari's continued snickering and the air temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Rand took a deep breath. Could you run that by me again? Oh my Tilda, said Remelia. Watching through a viewing portal that Patchouli had set up, watching the shouting match that had quickly developed. No, I will not even hear of it. Rand declared angrily, I will not have Haley waste away in this farce you call a school. The girl in question had sat down against the wall with Chen, and were currently sharing a bag of popcorn. It wasn't every day you see Rand screaming mad after all. Yukari is still trying to control her laughter. How dare you? McGonagall declared in response, equally enraged. Hogwarts is one of the finest magical institutions in Europe. And Lei has been enrolled by her parents since birth. Parents who clearly don't know what's good for a child. Don't you talk about Lily and James like that. They were wonderful people, some of the finest students I ever did teach. I will speak of the dead and gone however I like. Their names mean nothing to me, but Haley's future does. Rand's pupils became slits, and she began extruding a malevolent aura. She is not going. And there is nothing you can say nor do to change my. A closed parasol flew out in front of Rand's face. That is enough, Rand. I will take over from here. Yukari said, who had finally gotten her laughter under control. To McGonagall's surprise, Rand immediately did. Her aura receded, and she stepped back calmly, dutifully bowing. I apologize, Yukari-sama. Quite all right, Yukari said, bringing the parasol back to her shoulder, and facing McGonagall. I apologize for my Shikigami's outburst. But she cares deeply about young Haley, and has spent the last 5 years teaching her the things you deem unnecessary. McGonagall still wasn't happy with Rand, with both the things she said about Hogwarts and her disrespect of Lily and James. But she wasn't about to burn down any more bridges by refusing an apology. I suppose I also let my anger get the better of me. I apologize for my loss of temper. Yukari waved her hand. Think nothing of it. If nothing else, I had a good chuckle. McGonagall frowned, wondering if this one might be more troublesome than the last. Yukari smiled deviously. Now, as I see it, you are quite insistent on young Haley's attendance, and for the record, I am not entirely against it. Haley spat out her popcorn. Yukari-sama, you cannot be serious, Rand said, but Yukari cut her off with a wave of her hand. However, I do agree with my sweet dutiful Rand. I do not wish for Haley's still budding intellect to waste away. So I suggest a compromise. A compromise, McGonagall said. Indeed, my dear little Haley can attend Hogwarts, but Rand must accompany her to continue her tutelage, Yukari said. What? Haley exclaimed, shooting to her feet. If that is what you wish, Rand said, bowing deeply. But, said Haley, floundering for any excuse to keep her from going to school. Yukari kneeled down to Haley's level and put a hand on your shoulder. Haley, you know what I have told you, about why you cannot live in Gensokyo. Haley looked down. That certain things must be done out here before I can become a proper member of the Yakumo household, she said sullenly. Well Haley, do well at Hogwarts, and that may be the last thing I ask of you before you get your wish. Yukari said, smirking. Haley looked up, her eyes sparkling. You mean it? Of course, would I lie to you? Said Yukari sweetly, ruffling Haley's hair. I'll do my best, Haley said, her eyes burning with determination. I know you will, said Yukari, standing up, and turning back to McGonagall. Well, how about it, Professor? Those are my terms, and I will accept no others. I will have to speak to the headmaster, but I'm sure we can make accommodations. McGonagall said, although in truth she is relieved that a resolution had been so easily reached. Very well. Let's go speak to him then, said Yukari, walking past McGonagall, ran in tow. I am quite interested in meeting this Dumbledore fellow. Excuse me, McGonagall said. Don't worry, we won't hold you up. We'll be waiting in the Three Broomsticks, just drop by when Dumbledore is available. Yukari said, her and ran rounding a corner, where their footsteps abruptly ceased. And she's gone, Chen said. Well, that was fun, nice to meet you, Ms. McGonagall. I guess you better get going. Yukari-sama is patient, but there's no telling what she will do if she gets bored. McGonagall looked down at the small smirking cat girl, and decided that caution is the better part of valor in this situation. In that case, I'd better be on my way. She goes to leave, but then turns back to Haley, before I go. I just want to say, I am happy to see you doing well. I never really liked the idea of leaving you with those muggles, and I worried the worst when I heard of your disappearance. I am glad to see you safe. And with these words McGonagall departed. This left Haley and Chen standing in the corridor in an introspective silence. Well, that happened, Chen finally said. Yup. And now you're going to school again. Uh-huh. Chen clapped her hands together. Well, this calls for a celebration. Congratulations on getting into whatever it's called. This calls for snacks and entertainment. Haley gave her a blank stare. You are just using this as an excuse to get out of cleaning. It's clean enough, Chen said, ignoring the dust piles in the corners, and kicking her discarded broom to the wall. So is that a no to robbing 7-Eleven and harassing your cousin? No, I could do with a pick-me-up, Haley said sullenly. Thank you for both your time and understanding, Headmaster, said Yukari. Bowing. We shan't take up any more of your busy day. Oh no, it's quite all right, Lady Yukari. I'm glad we could come to a mutually beneficial agreement, said Dumbledore. I'm glad Haley is in such capable hands. Oh, you flatterer you, said Yukari, but I'm afraid we must be going, and thank you for young Haley's Gringotts key. I'm sure Haley will be ecstatic to find out she has become rich overnight. Not at all, it wasn't mine to begin with, I was only minding it. Will you be all right in leaving? McGonagall can accompany you if you wish. No need, we can see ourselves out, said Yukari. Stepping out the door. Goodbye, Headmaster, I look forward to our further dealings. The door shut. After a moment, McGonagall spoke. Albus, you wish to know what I think about them, don't you? Said Dumbledore, his eyes still on the door. Yes, even disregarding the obvious animal features of Ran, they both seem strange. I might go so far as to say, inhuman. McGonagall said. An astute observation, as neither of them are. Dumbledore said. He got up and turned around to stare out the window. Minerva, in this world, there are existences. Entities, some as old as human consciousness. Gods. Demons, creatures of fear, belief and legend. They embody the world as it once was, frightening, mysterious and unknowable. And they were once everywhere, some weak, some strong. And others whose strength could end the very world. There was a pause, and McGonagall had to ask. But what happened to them? Reason happened. Dumbledore said, it was the Muggles mostly. Their march of discovery and progress left little room for the unknowable. Where might and magic failed, reason and logic wore them down, leaving them weak, frail, until they started simply fading away. McGonagall felt a pang of sympathy. And there is nothing that could have been done. Dumbledore sighed. No one was willing to do it. We wizards, in our quest for secrecy, played no small part in their demise. As we hid the unknowable from the eyes of normal men, we knew what we were doing, but no one could bring themselves to care for the creatures of myth and legend, who had RDED their strength over us mortals for many millennia. We willingly helped commit an unintentional genocide. McGonagall bowed her head in memorial for the fallen creatures, before remembering where the conversation had began. But, does that mean, not all of these creatures are gone? Dumbledore continued. Many managed to survive, some by forming hidden enclaves, sharing what little power they have left to survive. Others by being too stubborn in existence to fade away, and live on, albeit a shadow of their former selves. And yet others, some are simply too powerful in existence to ever fade. And that is Yukari. McGonagall stared. I see, she said weakly, and what of Ran? A simpler question, Dumbledore said. In Japanese folklore, there is one of these creatures called a Yuko, a sort of fox spirit. A creature of great intellect and long life, who possesses potent magical powers, and specialize in illusion. It is said you can tell how old and powerful a Yuko is by counting its tails. An extra tail for every century it's lived. Ran had 9 tails, the most tails a Yuko can possess. She is most probably exceptionally powerful, although not as much as her master, I'd wager. Ona Gall stewed in her thoughts for a moment. Albus, I know it's probably a little late, but should we really? I do not think we need to worry. I do not think they are our enemies, said Dumbledore. That said, nor are they our friends. But I feel the most unwise thing we could do in this situation is to refuse their requests, especially if we wish Haley's attendance. I suppose so, said McGonagall. But I can't help but wonder what young Haley did to gain such odd company. What indeed? Said Dumbledore, still facing the window. And here we are in Diagon Alley. I believe the pun is intentional. Yukari said, as the bricks in the wall receded, putting her parasol back on her shoulder. For all your English wizarding needs. Chen and Haley went ahead and started poking around, with Ran and Yukari following behind. Hey, this place is pretty neat. Chen said, sticking her head into a cauldron. Hello. Chen, try not to cause a scene, or I shall have to send you home. Ran scolded. Indeed. Ran and Chen already seemed to be picking up quite a few stares, what with their obvious animal attributes. Sorry Ran-sama, Chen said, only slightly mollified. But she fell in behind Ran anyway. So where are we heading? Haley asked, as she had a staring contest with an owl in a shop window. Well, first we need to secure some of the local finances, as we will need it to purchase Haley's school supplies. So the bank is our first stop. Yukari said. Ooh, are we gonna rob a bank? Chen said excitedly, before Yukari bopped her on the head with her parasol. None of that here, Chen. Let's try not to make Haley an outlaw before her first term even starts. Yukari jokingly reprimanded. There will be plenty of time for that later. No, we are going to be withdrawing from Haley's family vault. I have a family vault. Haley said. Indeed, the headmaster had been holding on to the key for safekeeping, and when I visited he saw fit to return it. Remember to thank him when you meet him. Yukari said. And here we are. They walked up to the large marble building and through its bronze doors, and ignoring the inscription on the silver doors beyond it. They walked over to an open counter. Good morning, Yukari said. Good morning, Lady Yukari. What business do you have today? The goblin said, nodding respectfully. Yukari put a hand on Haley's shoulder. I have recently taken young Haley Potter under my wing. And her term is coming up. So I shall be making a withdrawal from her family's accounts. The goblin gave Haley a strange look, as if he was trying to work out whether he should be sorry for her or not, before turning back to Yukari. Very well. You have the key, I presume. Of course, said Yukari, handing it over. I also wish to officiate that Haley is under the protection of the Yakumo family, and to authorize myself and Ran to make withdrawals on her behalf. Of course, I shall have 2 extra keys be made immediately. Which one of you will be staying to officiate the paperwork? Ran is authorized to act in my behalf, said Yukari. Ran stepping forward. I shall accompany Haley to her vault. Chen may also accompany us. Very well. Griphook. The goblin called another goblin. Presumably Griphook. Take these 3 down to the Potter vaults. Griphook nodded and beckoned Haley, Chen and Yukari over. This way. They followed the goblin through another set of doors. Into a dark granite passage, with tracks embedded into the floor. The goblin whistled and a large cart rocketed up the track. All aboard. Yukari sat in the middle, being flanked on either side by Haley and Chen, while the goblin sat in front. And the cart thundered off into the tunnels. Chan and Haley whooped and cheered as the cart sped along irresponsibly fast, and taking in the various sights along the way. Chen claimed that she saw a dragon at one point, but Haley didn't get to see, and thought Chen was pulling her leg. Here we are, Vault 687, the Potter Vaults. Griphook said. And he and the trio disembarked. The goblin slotted the key into the lock, and pushed the heavy doors open. I shall wait here for you to finish. Take your time. Woo-ah, said Haley, staring at the mounds of gold, silver and bronze coins. These are all mine. Indeed they are. Yukari said, good thing you brought your purse, Wow Haley, who knew you were filthy stinking rich? Said Chen, surreptitiously pocketing some of the gold ones. Haley didn't respond, too busy shoveling coins into her purse. Until Yukari stopped her. That's enough Haley, it isn't going anywhere. That should be more than enough for today, or indeed the whole year, maybe two. Yukari said. Haley blushed. Yes Yukari-sama. On the trip back up the tunnels, Chen and Haley were discussing all the things she could now buy with the small fortune she had in her handbag. I mean, just think of all the catnip. Chen said, we might not even need to rob convenience stores for snacks. This last remark earning an odd look from the goblin. Forget that, said Haley, with this much I can even buy myself whatever I want for my birthday. Said Chen. Yukari gave a good-natured roll of her eyes. It's Haley's birthday or taking her out to dinner tonight. We discussed this before we left. Do try to pay attention. Haley pouted. We've known each other for years, the least you could do is remember my birthday. I'll buy you something nice. Chen said defensively. With money you just took from her vault. Yukari reminded, deepening Haley's pout. What's a few gold coins between friends? Chen said, shrugging innocently. They stared at each other for a moment, before bursting into laughter. The rest of the trip back up passed uneventfully, and they found themselves stepping out into the main hall of Gringotts once more. Here, your key, Griphook said, handing it to Haley. The spare keys should be done shortly, I shall go fetch them. Assuming your fox has finished the paperwork. You shall have them immediately. He bustled off. That's what I like about goblins, quick, efficient, unscrupulous and devious. Yukari said, before returning to Ran. Excellent timing, I have just finished. Ran said, with an impressive stack of papers in front of her. I just need Haley's signature. Okay, Haley said happily, walking up to Ran, and allowing herself to be picked up by the fox in order to reach. After spending a second or two trying to work out how to work a quill, it's like a calligraphy brush, you have to dip it in ink first. She proudly signed, Haley Potter. Dotting the I with a heart. Congratulations Miss Potter, in the eyes of Gringotts you are now an official ward of the Yakumo family, for your sins, the goblin said, allowing a smile. As if he just heard a really cruel joke. Thanks, said Haley tilting her head. Please wait a moment for your new keys, they will be here shortly. The goblin said, taking away the stack of papers. Excuse me, came a gruff voice from behind the group. They turned around, to see an absolute giant of a man, tall and broad. He towered over everyone in the room. He wore a large moleskin overcoat covered in pockets. And had a massive black beard. His black eyes were kind however, and they currently looked down at Haley. Sorry fair overhearing, but you wouldn't happen to be Haley Potter would you? He said. Haley grinned up at the giant. Yup, that's my name don't wear it out, or do. I like being talked about. This got a chuckle out of the giant. Well, my name's Rubius Hagrid, keeper of keys at Hogwarts. Although most folks just call me Hagrid. Sorry fair intruding, but, well, I haven't seen you since you were a baby. I just wanted to say hello really. You knew me as a baby. Haley said, looking up at the giant. I take it you were acquainted with the late Mr. and Ms. Potter. Yukari said, drawing Hagrid's attention, sorry for butting in, but allow me to introduce myself. I am Yukari Yakumo, Haley's current guardian. I was not personally acquainted with Haley's parents, may they rest in peace, but I understand they were very well loved. Yeah, that would be about right. Lily and James were the finest pair of wizards you ever did meet. Hagrid said, I must say, we all had quite a scare when Haley disappeared like that. But she seems to be in good company at least, better than that muggle lot at any rate. Quote, why thank you, said Yukari, in mock bashfulness, hiding her grin behind her fan. Hagrid turned back down to Haley. And look at you, all grown up, you Remy. ND me of her mother when she was your age. You've definitely got her eyes, that's for sure. I think you might have inherited that hair from your dad though, and your eyesight too by the looks of those glasses. Haley pouted. Gee, thanks Dad, she said sarcastically. A side ponytail was the best she could manage when it came to styling, at least without spending 2 hours every morning and a fortune on haircare. Her hair was eternally uncooperative. Hagrid couldn't help but laugh. Looks like you inherited her sense of humor from him too. I got a feeling you're gonna be a troublemaker, just like him. Is that so, Tilda? Said Haley. Smiling at Hagrid. Pardon, said Griphook, drawing their attention. I have the new keys. They will remain functional until the day when she ceases to be your ward. In that instance, I suggest returning them as soon as possible, or at least disposing of them properly, as they will violently combust and melt within 4 days. A pleasure doing business, said Yukari, as Rand took the keys. Likewise. Good day, said the goblin, leaving. Well, I suppose you better be off then, I still got business with the bank, said Hagrid, but then he seemed to have another thought. But I'll tell you what. It's your birthday today, ain't it? If you drop by the Leaky Cauldron on the way out, I'll give you a present. You remember my birthday, said Haley, her eyes filled with awe. I don't think I could ever forget it, said Hagrid quietly. But he rallied, and turned to Yukari. Say as Haley allowed pets. Of course, I'd never even think of denying her, said Yukari, smiling. All right, after I'm finished here, I'll get you a proper wizarding animal. Excuse me, you are holding up the counter, said a goblin irritably. Oops, better let you get going, said Hagrid, but don't forget. I'll meet you in the Leaky Cauldron with her present. We won't forget, said Yukari. Come on Haley, let's go. We've got a lot of shopping to do. Haley nodded, still slightly dumbfounded. And she was let out. A human I had never met before remembered my birthday, and he is going to give me a present, a pet even, mumbled Haley, then she smiled. I think I like him. An interesting character to be sure, said Yukari, although it would be inaccurate to consider him completely human. Do I have to? Haley whined. It's on the list, and you are required to wear them. Rand said sternly. But, Haley gestured to the school robes in the window, they are so boring. If they were colorful and fun they wouldn't be uniforms. Yukari said dryly, just grin and bear it. I doubt we are going to be getting a concession on this just because you want to express your individuality. Haley grumbled and walked in. Hello dear, said a woman, Hogwarts first year. Haley didn't say anything, so Yukari said, yes she is, and she would very much like to be fitted for her school robes, right Haley? Yes Yukari-sama, Haley said sullenly. Don't worry, it won't take long, said the woman. Just come over here, I'll get you fitted. Haley was stood on a stool, and the woman begun taking her measurements by slipping a robe over her head and pinning it to the right length. Thankfully she wasn't asked to take off her petticoat where nearby a boy was being similarly measured. Hello, Hogwarts first year, the boy said, catching Haley's attention. He was a pale boy with blonde hair. He looked kind of bored and aloof. For my sins, yes, said Haley, who had liked the sound of it when the goblin had said it. Not looking forward to it are you? Said the boy, raising his eyebrow. I was being homeschooled until now, Haley said, shrugging. When I got the letter, Yukari-sama decided to enroll me on a whim. So here I am. Strange, said the boy, not sounding particularly interested. He tilted his head toward Yukari, who was leaning against the wall fanning herself while reading a catalog. Is that who you mentioned? Is she your mother? My guardian, corrected Haley. My parents are dead. Sorry to hear that I suppose, said the boy, not sounding too sorry. It's okay, said Haley, shrugging. I got Yukari and ran, and the guy who did it got what was coming to him. That actually managed to provoke a look of surprise from the boy, and Haley smiled sweetly. There was a small silence for a moment as that effectively killed the conversation, but then Haley got bored. So what about you? Looking forward to going? Well yes I suppose, said the boy, probably equally bored. My father wanted me to go to a different school in Eastern Europe. But mother didn't like the idea of me being so far away from home. I suppose it's for the best, my family have been going to Hogwarts for generations. That's neat, said Haley. Avenue. Any idea what house you are going into? The boy asked. Not really, Haley said. She didn't even know there were houses until now, but she wasn't going to tell him that. I suppose no one does really, said the boy. But I am sure I'll be in Slytherin, everyone in my family has been. You are really proud of your family, aren't you? Haley asked, tilting her head. Well, yes I am, what of it? The boy asked, with a slightly dangerous edge. Oh nothing, said Haley, having pride in your family is cool and all, but it isn't much substitute for having pride in yourself. All done dear, said the woman measuring Haley. Taking the robe off. Finally, said Haley, hopping down from the stool, see you at Hogwarts, she said to the slightly dumbfounded boy, before skipping off to Yukari. Making friends? Yukari asked. More like cultivating potential enemies. Haley said. Yukari patted her on the head. Good girl. In a few minutes they left with their school clothes. Haley had specifically asked for extras in order to experiment with. The next stop was the bookshop next door, Flourish and Blots. Ran and Chen were already there, the former looking far more interested than the latter. Chen perked up slightly from behind the large stack of books she was holding. Oh hey Haley, great timing. Please stop her before she buys the whole damn store. Ran, my list didn't have that many books. Haley said. I know, said Ran, dropping some more books in Haley's hands, but that doesn't mean we should limit ourselves to what the school has prescribed. No student of mine will simply be average. The pile in Haley's hands started getting larger. Besides, I myself wish to know the extent of the school's curriculum. So all the ones Chen is carrying are for my own personal reading. Is that so? Haley said, getting weak at the knees. Help, Chen said weakly, trying to control the massive pile in her hands. Yukari giggled, but decided to show mercy. Now Ran, that will do. You can come back in your own time. But we have other places to be today, and dinner reservations in the evening. Oh, of course Yukari-sama, said Ran, stopping what she was doing and bowing. I apologize for the inconvenience. Quite all right, said Yukari, lifting the pile of books out of Haley's hand with a wave of her own. We'll just take these to the counter. Don't worry, we'll pay for these. You just have a look around for any books that take your fancy. Haley decided to take up Yukari's advice and do a bit of personal browsing. She picked up a few curse books, as well as some miscellaneous titles on magical beasts, creatures and people of myth to see if any of her friends were in there, and some trashy romance novels which she found funny, as well as some other miscellaneous fiction. When she went to the counter, she saw several people staring as Yukari gently dropped the books one at a time into a gap, as Ran and Chen stood to one side. Chen looking visibly relieved to not be carrying all those books. There was also a tall thin blonde man standing to one side, watching the scene with an unreadable expression. The resemblance with the boy from the shish op next door suggested this to be a relative, probably his father. These two, Haley said, dropping her pile on the counter. My you are a bookish lot, said the man at the counter. He raised his eyebrows at some of the titles. You're a first year, aren't you? These curse books are a bit advanced for you, aren't they? Well, they are more for inspiration than anything else, Haley said. The man gave her an odd look, but probably due to the company she kept decided not to ask. They left the store not long after. They made several other stops after that. They brought a cauldron, some scales, an incredibly fancy telescope. And at Haley's insistence, a magical trunk that was light as a feather and had several switching compartments including a secret room, from the various stores around the alley. They also spent a good deal of time at the apothecary as Haley decided to buy a whole lot of stuff to send to Marissa, thinking she might get a kick out of it. Let's see, what next? Said Yukari, as they all sat at a corner cafe for some tea. The wand, Yukari-sama. Ran said, looking at Haley's list. Why do I need a wand anyway? Haley said, I can do lots of magic, and I don't need some magic stick to do that. It's a different sort of magic, Haley. This wizard magic is rather more dainty, delicate than the magic I have been teaching you, and it requires a foci, hence the wand. Yukari said, there is also the matter of blending in. You have seen the attention I gain whenever I open a gap, have you not? If you start throwing handfuls of green lightning, it will bring you unnecessary attention. You remember what I said, Haley? Yes, Yukari-sama, said Haley. She had been instructed to keep her Yukai nature on the down low, as much as it is possible to do so. For now, she is Haley, the ordinary girl on her way to her first year of magic school, much to her annoyance. Albeit one with weird teeth and a scar. Haley at least conceded that it might be at least fun to keep her nature under wraps for now. If only for the sake of surprising people later. For that matter, maybe we should get wands. What do you think, Ran? Yukari said. If you wish, Yukari, although I will stand out regardless of wands. Ran said, her ears flicking for emphasis. True enough, Yukari said. Walking into Ollivander's, they were greeted with a powerful, yet benign magical aura that permeated the entire building. It hung heavy in the air, perhaps intensified by the small size of the shop. It left Haley awed. Good afternoon. And then the man himself. An elderly gentleman with silvery eyes, he had an almost ethereal, otherworldly quality to him, and his unblinking eyes spoke of the wisdom of something truly ancient. Ah yes, said the man. Yes, yes. I thought I'd be seeing you soon. Haley Potter. It wasn't a question. You have your mother's eyes. It seems only yesterday she was in here herself, buying her first wand. 10¼ inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice wand for charm work. He got closer, as if examining Haley. Your father, on the other hand, favored a mahogany wand. 11 inches. Pliable. A little more power and excellent for transfiguration. Well, I say your father favored it, it's really the wand that chooses the wizard, of course. Wah, what are you? Said Haley. The man chuckled. My, it's not every day someone asks me a question like that, said the man. As for what I am Ollivander, wandmaker. And what of you, what might you be? A Yukoop, said Haley, covering her mouth when she remembered she was supposed to be keeping that a secret. It's quite all right, Haley, said Yukari, stepping forward, we have nothing to fear here. Good afternoon, Mr. Ollivander, I have heard a lot about you. As I have you, said Ollivander. What business does the boarder of the Phantasm have in my humble shop? Oh, the usual kind, said Yukari, I am functioning as Haley's guardian, and she needs a wand for school. Of course, said Ollivander. Pulling out an odd tape measure, please hold out your wand arm. Haley held out her right arm. The tape measure started measuring on its own, taking all kinds of bizarre measurements. While Ollivander small talked about wand construction, while taking boxes off the shelves. That's enough, he instructed the tape measure, which immediately ceased its activity. Right then, Ms. Potter. Try this one. Beechwood and dragon heartstring, 9 inches, nice and flexible. Just take it and give it a wave. She tried but with no results. And Ollivander took it away and handed her another. What followed was a length of time of just trying out different wands with little to no success, much to the frustration of Haley. She was on the verge of faking something, before she caught a look from both Yukari and Ollivander. And decided to just keep waving sticks like an idiot. This went on until, tricky customer, Not to worry, we'll find the perfect match here somewhere. I wonder, now, yes, why not? Unusual combination, holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. When Haley took this one, she got a tingle up and down her arm. Feeling confident and relieved, she spun it above her head, releasing a shower of multicolored sparks. Yukari smiled and clapped, while Ollivander cried. Oh, bravo. Yes, indeed, oh, very good. Well, 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 how curious, how very curious. Quote. He put Haley's wand back into its box and wrapped it in brown paper, still muttering, curious, curious. What, is something wrong? Asked Haley. Mr. Ollivander fixed Haley with his pale stare. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Ms. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand, gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother. Why, its brother gave you that scar. Haley tilted her head. My parents' murderer was a wizard. You haven't been told, Ollivander said, before shaking his head. Well, it is not my story to tell, but I advise you learn it soon, otherwise you might be in for a few surprises. But I can tell you this, your wand's brother did many great things. Many were terrible indeed, but great can expect many great things from you as well. Terrible great things are great things? Haley asked. Ollivander handed her the wand box. That is for you to decide. Haley thanked Ollivander for the wand, and ran out, presumably to brag to Chen. However, Yukari remained. I take it there is something else you need to ask me. Ollivander said. Of course. Yukari said, before reaching into a gap and pulling out a thick cherry branch, and handing it to Ollivander. She then reached up, and plucked a single hair from her head, which she held out for Ollivander to take. Do you think you could make something of this? I am sure I could, but, he looked down at the branch in his hands, this is some strange wood. It has a certain darkness about it. It has most certainly tasted blood. It is a branch from the Seigyu Ayakashi, a Yukai tree, sealed away by the death of one of my best friends over 1,000 years ago. But not before it claimed the lives of many. It seemed fitting. Ollivander put the branch down reverently and took the hair as well. Ah, yes, this will serve well in a wand, a very, very powerful wand. You can use it however you please. I doubt you will need all of it for one wand after all. Same for the branch. I could even get you more if you desire. I have no love for that tree, said Yukari. Very generous. But I doubt many wizards could use wands made of such potent ingredients. Ollivander said, but I will keep that in mind. Pleasure doing business with you, said Yukari. Handing over a large pouch of galleons. I shall return within 2 weeks to collect the finished piece. Is that reasonable? Very much so, said Ollivander, bowing. It has been a pleasure meeting you, Yukari. Likewise, said Yukari. Now if you excuse me, the others might be becoming impatient. Oh my god, she's so pretty. 3 inches, Haley exclaimed, looking at her new owl. It was pure white, and regarded Haley curiously. Hagrid chuckled. Thought you might like her. Owls make great pets. Useful too, they keep vermin down, deliver your post and are good company. Thank you, said Haley, hugging Hagrid's leg. You are my favorite human. Don't mention it, said Hagrid, slightly embarrassed, and also slightly confused by Haley's wording. I think Marissa and Reimu might be disappointed to hear that. Yukari said teasingly. Yeah, well, when's the last time they remembered my birthday? Haley said, but she let go of Hagrid's leg. Regardless, I thank you for your generosity, Mr. Hagrid, said Yukari, bowing. Haley doesn't have a lot of friends, or even people she regards positively, outside of our household. You have clearly left an impression on her. Please continue to look out for her at Hogwarts. I'd be glad to, Ms. Yukari, said Hagrid, blushing slightly. Now I must simply invite you to Haley's birthday dinner. I won't take no for an answer, said Yukari. Oh well, that's mighty generous of you, miss. But, well, see, I've got important business back at Hogwarts. I don't want to keep Dumbledore waiting. He's counting on me after all. Hagrid said, although he did look like he wanted to say yes. Yukari gained a thoughtful expression. Yes, I suppose so. Care to wait a few moments? Without waiting for an answer, she stepped out of the door. Less than 5 minutes later, she stepped back in. With Dumbledore. What a curious power. Ah, Hagrid, what a pleasant surprise. Dumbledore said. Professor Dumbledore, what are you doing here, sir? Said Hagrid. Well, some sudden business had me in town. When I happened to run into Lady Yukari here, who invited me to dinner to celebrate young Haley's birthday. Have you been invited too? Well, yes, Professor. Hagrid mumbled. I was gonna say no, as I gotta get you know what back to Hogwarts. Nonsense, Hagrid, said Dumbledore jovially. No need to rush, I insist. Thank you, Headmaster, said Hagrid. Not sir. What to think of Dumbledore's sudden appearance, but happy that he might spend a bit more time with Haley. Dumbledore then spotted Haley and crouched down in front of her. And here is the girl herself. I know you have probably figured it out, but I am Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts. Nice to see you again, Haley. We've met, Haley said. Long before you could remember, Dumbledore said, smiling. He brought out a parcel from behind his back. It's not much, but I always quite like getting sweets on my birthday. Thanks a lot, said Haley enthusiastically, accepting the parcel. When she looked Dumbledore in the eye, however, she gained an introspective expression. Is something the matter? Dumbledore said. No, it's just. Haley glanced at Yukari and then back at Dumbledore. You have similar eyes as all. Dumbledore blinked, before patting her on the head. You are an observant girl, aren't you? Hee Tilda, said Haley happily. Well, now that we are all here, how about we get going? I have reservations at this charming little bistro not far from here. As it happens, Yukari had reserved an entire dining room for the birthday, and there was a large table spread waiting for them. And there was enough even for the extra guests. Speaking of extra guests, Remy, mailing, Haley said, running to greet the new arrivals. Hey there kid, happy birthday, mailing said, kneeling to take Haley's running tackle hug. How you been doing? Happy birthday Haley, and congratulations on your acceptance. I suppose, said Remila, smiling. She was flanked as always by Sakuya. But she seemed to have managed to drag Patchouli along as well. You know who sends her love. Thanks, said Haley, who mailing had lifted onto her shoulder. Come in, we've already started, and I have some new friends. As the SDM party arrived at the table, Remilia immediately going to converse with Yukari, Dumbledore recognized two of them immediately. The small girl was none other than Remilia Scarlet, one of the most charming and influential vampires in Europe. She is said to have considerable influence in many East European ministries of magic, primarily centered around Romania, where she called home. It is also said that even other vampires are scared of her powerful magic, and she has been on record of claiming to be one of the last, true, vampires. No one is sure of the truth of her claims. But no one can deny the bat-like wings on her back, and her seemingly eternal youth, even after at least 500 years of age. Thankfully she largely keeps to herself, and is rarely seen, except for Quidditch, which she is a patron. The other, however, Patchouli, as if sensing the scrutiny, looked up from her book. She squinted at Dumbledore for a moment, before something akin to recognition passed her face. Oh, you're Dumbledore, right? Didn't recognize you under all that gray hair. You however haven't changed a bit, Miss Knowledge. Dumbledore said evenly. To say dumb, Blador knew Patchouli was a bit of an understatement. In fact, they went to school together. Even as many claimed Dumbledore to be the greatest student in the history of Hogwarts, none who knew of he could deny the sheer brilliance that was Patchouli Knowledge. In fact, many had stated that her brilliance was one of her greatest flaws. 2 years under Dumbledore, no one knew the real surname or origin of the purple-haired, purple-eyed girl, if she even had one. She entered the school a mystery and left an even bigger mystery. The only thing anyone knew for sure was her completely terrible health. A Ravenclaw. While her first and second years were marked with brilliant academic achievements and remarkable magical growth, by her third year, she started to change. She became dissatisfied with her lessons, the teachers, the curriculum, the school, life even. She began reading through her lessons, spending her time submerged in books, refusing to acknowledge the other students, or even teachers unless she had to. And it only got worse in her 5th and 6th years when her proficiency at magic started outstripping the teachers, and she sunk further and further into her books. In fact, own students had taken to calling her the Great Unmoving Library. By her 7th year, she was barely turning up to classes, preferring instead to lurk in unused classrooms and perform strange magical rituals that most people at Hogwarts had never seen before. She had even largely foregone the use of her wand. In the end, the teachers of Hogwarts were quite happy to get rid of her. After her graduation, she appeared once or twice, occasionally performing seemingly impossible magical feats, but she eventually vanished entirely, and was largely forgotten, apart from the few books attributed to her name of dubious authenticity that appear every now and then, and a chocolate frog card. Indeed, the only reason Dumbledore recalls her is because, both as a student and a teacher, Dumbledore was one of the few who Patchouli ever bothered to associate with. One of the few that were worth her time. From their few interactions, Patchouli was always unsatisfied and bitter. She was constantly suffering under her seemingly incurable asthma and anemia. But she always pushed herself to the limits of what her conditions would allow. She felt that both the school and the wizarding world at large was holding her back from attaining true power. She resented her conditions with a burning passion, which only magnified with every failed attempt to cure them. And on the day of her graduation, Dumbledore remembered her words clearly. I will not let my condition control my life. If I cannot cure it, I will simply ignore it. I intend to live forever after all. And here she was, having barely aged a day, with her nose still firmly planted in a book. The years have been kind to me, said Patchouli, kinder than they have to you at least. I am surprised. You always seemed like the only one close to my level. And it really isn't that hard, once you grasp the mechanics. It didn't take great intellect to figure out what she was insinuating. I can't say I really ever sought it out, Miss Knowledge, he said, keeping his voice even. Your loss, Patchouli said, before seemingly losing interest in the conversation, and returning to her book. Dumbledore relaxed slightly. Even after whatever Patchouli had done to ensure her youth, it hadn't changed her sole desire in life. To be left alone with her books. Meanwhile Mailing was being introduced to Hagrid. Nice to meetcha, said Mailing holding out a hand. Hong Mailing, gardener and gatekeeper to the Scarlet Mansion. Hagrid, keeper of keys at Hogwarts, groundskeeper I suppose, he said extending his hand, but not sure how to take Mailing's hand. Mailing solved it by grasping two of his fingers, and shaking, surprising Hagrid with her strong grip. Mailing is super strong, she can punch holes in concrete, Haley said enthusiastically, still perched on Mailing's shoulder. Oh hush you, said Mailing, ruffling her hair. Before addressing Hagrid, so if I may ask, how did you come to be acquainted with our little hellion? Well, I knew her folks, see. I'd seen her as a baby. And then I sorta ran into her at Gringotts, and seeing as it was her birthday and all, I got her a present. Hagrid said. He got me an owl. Haley said cheerily, pointing at the cage that inhabited the corner of the room, where the owl dozed. Mailing laughed. I can see why she's fond of you then, she loves attention. I've gathered that, said Hagrid jovially. And what about you if you don't mind me askin'? Nothing too special, said Mailing. My mistress and Yukari happened to be on friendly terms, and I was left to watch Haley during one of their meetings. We sort of hit it off. Haley's currently living in one of my mistress's properties, so we see each other often. Mailing was one of my first friends. Haley said. That too. And with that in mind, said Mailing, lifting Haley off of her shoulder, much to Haley's disappointment, and placed Haley in front of her. It's your birthday after all, so I got you this. Mailing kneeled down and dropped a ridiculously long, oddly striped scarf over Haley's shoulders, and wrapped it around Haley's neck a few times, although it still trailed on the floor. I heard your favorite was Tom Baker. So I knitted this up for you. It's a bit too long, but I'm sure you'll grow into it. Haley looked down at the scarf, and beamed up at the redhead. Thank you, Mailing, said Haley, hugging her tenderly. Hagrid felt like he was looking at a pair of sisters. It was heartwarming. When the hug broke, Mailing reached behind her back and pulled out an A4 envelope. Got something else too, from you-know-who. She got a bit of her dinner on it, but it's still a lovely sentiment, and some amazing progress, so be sure to thank her. She really wanted to come, but, you know. Hagrid W. as slightly alarmed by the usage of you-know-who, but from context he quickly figured they weren't talking about Voldemort. He was still curious however. Haley accepted it eagerly, something from FL. Shish, Mailing said. You know how Remelia feels about using her name in company. Oops, said Haley. Now Hagrid was very curious. What's this about then? Mailing rubbed the back of her neck awkwardly, while Haley opened her envelope. Well you see. It is more than my job's worth to discuss, is what you are trying to say, right Mailing? Said Sakuya, appearing so suddenly that Mailing, Haley and Hagrid all jumped. Right, that, said Mailing, shooting Hagrid an apologetic look. Mistress wishes a word with you Mailing, said Sakuya, your presence is required immediately. Mailing ruffled Haley's hair again. Gotta go kiddo, see you in a little bit. She walks off with Sakuya, to where Yukari and Remelia sat. Hagrid decided not to push the issue, but he did take a look at what Haley had got from the mystery individual. It was a picture, rendered crudely in crayon by an unskilled hand, probably a child, and it was of two smiling girls holding hands. The one on the right was clearly Haley, with her black hair, glasses, hat, and green dress and eyes. The other was blonde with a red dress and white hat. Her eyes were red and had little fangs in her smile, and on her back was some sort of brightly colored wings. In the bottom right corner, there was some initials, FS. And on the top corner, there was what looks suspiciously like blood stains. Curiosity is a terrible thing sometimes. The party had settled down after the new arrivals, and to Haley's horror, it had devolved into stories about her childhood. So I finally found her in the kitchen, and I kid you not, everything including her, was covered in whipped cream. Mailing said, waving a half-eaten chicken drumstick for emphasis, and she just sort of looks at me pathetically, and in this tiny voice says, I can explain. I just about died laughing. There was a general laughter as Haley tried to sink into her chair. Now, I think we have had enough of teasing the girl. Dumbledore said. Perhaps it is enough stories for now. Haley looked up with hope. Actually, said Yukari, I think there is one more story that needs to be told, and I think you are one of the better ones to tell it, Professor. Haley groaned. But Dumbledore chuckled. Oh really, I can't say I know any amusing stories about Haley. Oh not amusing, said Yukari, but I think, considering how Haley is about to enter Hogwarts, it might be best for Haley to learn the circumstances behind the death of her parents. There was a silence around the table, with variations of surprise and interest. You mean she don't know? Hagrid said. Almost incredulously, almost every wizard in Europe knows, a lot grew up knowing her name. I'm famous, Haley said, her eyes sparkling, but was lightly chopped on the forehead by Yukari, telling her to calm down. I gave her the short version. Her parents murdered, and she somehow disposed of the murder, despite being an infant. But I didn't tell her the whole thing out of fear of it going to her head. But going to Hogwarts, it's best she hears an entirely accurate version, and have to suffer through her bloated ego. I'm not that bad, pouted Haley. I must admit, I am curious too, said Remelia. I was familiar with the Dark Lord, at least by reputation. He seemed like a rather formidable fellow. I was never quite sure on how someone like that could have fallen to an infant. Dumbledore decided not to comment on how flippantly Remelia referred to Lord Voldemort. Considering she has Patchouli for company, he could understand being rather dismissal of the Dark Lord. After all, Patchouli was powerful when she left school. One could only shudder to think how much power she has accumulated since. In fact, it also begs the question on how powerful Remelia is, considering she can keep the knowledge-hungry Patchouli by her side. Dumbledore thought about it for a moment, before he said, very well, I suppose I can tell it as good as anyone. Although to be honest, no one knows quite what happened that night. The story itself begins with a dark wizard, one so powerful and terrible that he held the entire wizarding world in the grips of fear. He was called Lord Voldemort. And so Dumbledore told the story of the girl who lived. Yukari was right, Haley became completely insufferable for a week. Haley and company stepped onto King's Cross Station, with Chen struggling with a trolley of their collective belongings, while Yukari gave some hushed last-minute instructions to Ran. After she was finished, she turned to Haley. Very well, here we are. What does your ticket say again? Platform 9 3/4, departs at 11, said Haley. Yukari shook her head. 9 3/4, honestly. What's wrong with 9 1/2? Come on. It's probably somewhere in between 9 and 10. The odd procession made their way across the station, completely unnoticeable to the ordinary people they passed. Rand's magic made sure of that. Kitsunes were masters of illusion after all, so a simple spell to render non-magical humans unable to notice them was simple. The only ones who could possibly do it better was Koichi Komeiji, and Yukari herself. When they arrived at the divide between platforms 9 and 10, Yukari examined the wall critically, running the tip of her parasol along the bricks. Fascinating, Yukari said. Despite their shortcomings when it comes to power and ambition, these wizards are remarkably good at folding space, for humans anyway. A whole extra train platform, and what's more, it is a seamless connection. And one must assume an entire train line was built with no one ever being the wiser. We must give them props for their finesse, if nothing else. She turned to Haley and said, Haley, during your stay at Hogwarts I instruct you to learn everything there is to know about how the wizards fold space and conceal themselves. It will be a good learning experience. Yes, Yukari-sama, said Haley, dreading it already. Excuse me dear, said a friendly voice behind them. They turned to see a plump-looking woman, leading a group of red-headed boys and a young red-headed girl. All the boys had similar trunks to Haley's. And one of them had an owl. It didn't take a genius to know what they were here for. Oh sorry, am I in the way? Yukari said, stepping to one side, and gesturing for the others to do the same. After you. We are in no rush. Thank you. We won't be long, said the woman. All right, Percy, you first. The eldest boy strode forward and Haley watched with interest as he simply disappeared through the wall. "Fred, you next," the plump woman said. "I'm not Fred, I'm George," said the boy. "Honestly, woman, you call yourself our mother. Can't you tell I'm George?" "Sorry George dear. Only joking. I am Fred," and then he too went and disappeared through the wall, closely followed by his twin. "All right Ron, go on." And then the youngest boy followed. "Come on Ginny, off we go," said the woman, leading the girl. But she stopped by Yukari. "Thank you for your patience dear. Is this your girl's first year?" "It's a first for all of us. We came from abroad. England's magic culture is rather fascinating," said Yukari. "I am interested to see what becomes of it. But perhaps we shouldn't be sharing a conversation here. There will be plenty of time for small talk AF. We have our respective wards on the train. I suppose you're right, see you on the platform then." And the woman walked through the barrier, but the whole time the little girl didn't take her eyes off Ran or Chen. "Well, off we go then," said Yukari before stepping through the barrier, quickly followed by Haley and Chen, with Ran bringing up the rear. The platform itself was surprisingly open and spacious, although packed. There was only one track, which was occupied by a bright red steam engine. The words, "The Hogwarts Express," was emblazoned proudly on the side in golden letters. "Cool," said Haley. "After all, who doesn't love trains? A fine engine to be sure," said Yukari, no exception to the rule, she even used them as an attack sometimes. "Let's find ourselves some seats. I believe the train may be departing soon," said Ran. "Yeah, I wanna sit down already," whined Chen. Haley and Chen went off with their luggage. Ran stayed with Yukari as she went off to talk to the witch from earlier. For what reason? Haley didn't know. Maybe she took a liking to her. This of course left Haley and Chen to manhandle their luggage into the train. Even with the weight reduction charm, Haley's trunk still weighed a ton with all the junk she piled into it. And poor Chen was left trying to manhandle Ran's trunk, which had practically a whole library of material. Just as Chen was considering something drastic, help came from the two red-headed twins from earlier. "Need a hand, if you could be so kind," grunted Haley as her trunk had wedged in the door. "Hey, Fred, give us a hand here." With the twins' help, they managed to get the trunks onto the trains, and into a compartment, Ran's one taking all four of them to lift. "Oh thank God," Haley said, collapsing into her seat and fanning her face with her cap. "Thanks a bunch." "No problem, but seriously what do you have in there, small buildings?" said Fred. "Hang on," said George, leaning in. "What's that on your forehead?" "Oh, you mean this," said Haley, moving her bangs out of the way. "Funny story behind this." "Blimey, are you?" said George. "She is," said Fred. "Aren't you?" Haley giggled. "Oh wow, I've been told I'm famous. But with this kind of attention you'll make me blush." She stood up and curtsied. "I am Haley Potter, pleasure to make your acquaintance." They seemed slightly taken aback by the politeness, but rallied quickly. "Well, I am Fred, brother of George, and a son of the House of Weasley," he said enthusiastically, bowing comically low. "Well, I am George, brother of Fred, and a son of the House of Weasley." He mimicked his twin. "At your service," they said in unison. Haley snorted. "Charmed," she said in between giggles. "Hey, don't feed the girl's ego too much," said Chen, who was sitting in the luggage racks. "I have to live with her, you know." The twins looked up, and only at that point did they notice just how strange Chen was, with her ears and dual tails. She dropped down in front of them, and cocked her hips with her hands on either side. "Name's Chen Yakumo, Haley's partner in crime and deflator of her ego, and you two look like troublemakers." She gave a cat-like grin. "I have a feeling we will be getting along fine." Fred and George looked at each other and then returned the grin. "Is that right then? Excuse me." Everyone turned to the door, to where Ran stood. "Your mother is looking for you outside." "Oh thanks," said Fred, although he seemed to be burning with curiosity about both Chen and Ran, but left in search of their mother anyway, passing Ran as they exited the compartment. Ran sat down and pulled a book out from behind her back. "The train will be departing soon, nothing more to do but wait, I guess," said Chen, who yawned and hopped back into the luggage racks. "Wake me up if something interesting happens," she said, curling up. Haley pulled out a Walkman and a large headset, but before she could slip it on, Yukari's voice came in through the window. "Oh Haley dear Tilda." Haley dropped her headset beside her and leaned out the window. Yukari stood just under the window, looking up at her. In the background the Weasleys were saying their goodbyes. All ready to go. Yep, I'm gonna bowl this school over, just you wait. Haley said happily. I'm sure you will do me proud, said Yukari. She put her finger to her mouth as if trying to recall something. There's just one more thing I need to tell you. Now what was it? Haley waited with bated breath. Yukari grinned slowly. Oh yes, have fun. Haley cocked her head, but gave her signature Sharky grin. With gusto. Yukari blew her a kiss. That's my girl. As the train pulled out of the station, Haley put her headset on, smiling. Whatever happens, she will make the most of it. She put on some pop music and started reading the book Ron had insisted she read on the trip up. Ron Weasley peered in the compartment, the one which his brothers said Haley Potter was in. The girl who was supposedly Haley sat reading and rhythmically bobbing her head. Her hat and fringe made it impossible to see the scar, if it was even there. This wouldn't have been the furs. Practical joke Fred and George pulled after all. She also wore a strange pair of what appeared to be large black earmuffs. Can I help you? Ron jumped slightly and looked to the speaker. It was one of the women Haley. If it really was Haley, had been with. The one with loads of foxtails and a pair of animal ears clearly defined under a mob cap. She had been reading too, but had placed the bow okay on her lap and was looking at him in a friendly yet formal way. He had no idea what she was, and hadn't got a chance to ask her mother before they had departed. Oh right, is anyone sitting there? He said, pointing to the seat beside the fox woman, and opposite Haley. Everywhere else is full. Be my guest, she said, patting the seat. Ron sat down, and it immediately went into an awkward silence, at least for him. The fox woman had gone back to her reading, and the girl who might be Haley Potter doesn't even seem to have noticed he was there. Ron didn't know where to look. Next to him was a woman he didn't even know was human, and in front of him was quite possibly the girl who lived. He didn't want to be rude to either, so he took to staring at the door awkwardly. But he couldn't help stealing glances at the girl every now and then. It's okay to look, you know, she loves attention. Ron jumped and tried to find the source of the new voice, eventually finding it, the other girl who had been with Haley on the platform, the one with the cat tails and ears. She was lying in the luggage racks and looking down at him with amusement, like a cat who had found a funny mouse. I wasn't looking, Ron said defensively. Of course you was. She's some big shot celebrity around here, isn't she? The girl said, Haley Potter, girl who lived or something like that. No need to be shy. Like I said, she likes attention. As if to prove her point, she called loudly to Haley, hey Haley. Hi Chan. Potter. Earth to Haley. You've got an admirer. Ron went immediately red with embarrassment. But it didn't seem that Haley had even noticed. She just kept sitting there bobbing her head. Then she sniggered. I'll be taking that, said Ran, taking the book from her grip. Hey, I was, said Haley, slipping her headphones off. But stopped when she saw Ran staring disapprovingly, holding the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic she had been hiding in the pages of the book she had been pretending to read. Rand simply rolled up the comic and lightly bopped Haley on the head with it, and then passed her book back. I expect you to have read to chapter 4 by the time we arrive. Haley grumbled as she took the book back, and only then did she notice Ron. Oh, hello. When did you get here? Not too long. Are you really Haley Potter? He said suddenly. He had to know for sure. Didn't I just say she was? Chen said, rather irritably. Yup, that's my name. Don't wear it out, or do. I like being talked about. Is that your catchphrase now? Chen finished, earning a glare. You see what I mean? She loves being in the center of attention. Hey Ron, hey Haley. The twins poked in. Listen, we're going down the middle of the train. Lee Jordan's got a giant tarantula down there. Really? Said Haley, springing to her feet. Take me with you, I wanna see. And she's gone, said Chen, watching Haley disappear with the twins. That's Haley Potter. Wherever there's action, she won't be far behind. Can you believe that people think she's some sort of hero? You two are with her, right? Ron said, using the talkative cat girl as an opportunity to sat his curiosity. Yup, name's Chen Yakumo, said the cat girl. And I am Ran Yakumo, Haley's tutor and Chen's master, Ran added, pausing in her reading to join the conversation. I'm sorry, it's just, I'd heard she had gone to live with muggles. And you, he tried to find the right words. About as far from muggle as it is possible to be. Chen said helpfully. No need to be bashful, we know we aren't normal. Haley doesn't like talking about her, muggle, family. I'd advise not bringing up the subject around her, Rand said. But suffice it to say, they were not what we could call kind to her, and she is better off without them. She has spent the last 5 years with us and is happier for it. So what exactly are you? Ron asked. There was a small silence, before Rand simply said, I am Haley's tutor. Nothing more you really need to know. And I'm her cat, Chen said. Sorry kid, but we girls have our secrets. Sorry, said Ron, wondering if he crossed a line. Don't worry about it, curiosity is healthy. Said Chen dismissively. But it's important to learn, although you ask questions, there ain't always gonna be answers. There was a mess of screams and giggles as a bunch of girls ran down the corridor. Followed by Haley with her arms above her head in a monster-like pose making roar noises while a huge tarantula sat on top of her cap. She in turn was followed by Fred, George, and Lee Jordan who were all laughing. And at the right end of the procession was Percy looking right miffed. Like how the hell is that girl revered as a hero, Chen said, shaking her head in amusement. Hedwig hooted in agreement. Ron couldn't help but snort. Haley was back in the compartment. After a few minutes of running around with a tarantula on her head, Percy had finally caught up with her and the twins. And given them all a stern talking to. None of them listened. She was back to reading the book that Ran had instructed her to read, but was in much higher spirits. But before she could slip the headset on again, Ron had to ask, what is that? Haley gave him a look as if not sure whether he is serious or not. They're headphones. At Ron's blank expression she elaborated, Air for listening to music without disturbing other people. But where does the music come from? Ron asked. My Walkman, Haley said. More blank looks. Haley rolled her eyes and held up the small disc Walkman she had. This is a Walkman, a muggle device that can play music off of CDs, which are sort of tiny, lightweight records, which is then transferred up this wire, and into the headphones, for me to listen to. Wow. Muggles can do that. Without magic. Ron said. Weird. The technology has been around for ages, I don't see what's special about it, what do wizards use? Well, we have a wireless at home. And we listen to music on that sometimes, but I never knew muggles could just carry around music like that. Haley gave him a weird look, as if trying to work out whether he's stupid or just ignorant. Before shrugging and deciding it's probably the latter. Maybe the wizards are just into luddism. There was a rattling out in the corridor, and the compartment door opened. Anything from the trolley dears, said a woman with a food cart. Sure, I'm game, said Haley, getting up. Anyone else hungry? If you're buying, said Chen. If you would be so kind Haley, said Ran. That's not what I meant. Haley deadpanned before sighing and turning to Ron. Well, since I'm shouting everyone, you want anything? Huh, said Ron, slightly off balance. No, I'll be alright. I've got sandwiches. Considering his downcast demeanor, Haley didn't buy it. Reet. She went out to the cart, and when she came back, she had her hands full of stuff. Hey, check this out, wizards have their own snack foods. I've never even seen all this stuff. That's surprising, considering the wizards' education standards. I'm surprised they even know how, Rand said. Ron was surprised at the barely repressed scorn in the otherwise polite and kind Ran. Who cares, what you got? Said Chen, leaning down with interest. Let's see, said Haley, laying them out on the seat next to her. We've got Birdie Bott's every flavor beans, licorice wands, chocolate frogs, pumpkin pasties. Let's have those first, said Ran. I insist you get some real food in you before gorging yourself on sweets. Alrighty, said Haley, before tossing a pasty to Chen and Ran, and to Ron's surprise one fell into his lap too. No need to be bashful, said Haley, taking a bite of her pasty. I'd feel like a total jerk to be eating all this stuff in front of you. Stop talking with your mouth full, chastised Ran. Yeah wush, your problem, said Chen, who had stuffed the whole pasty into her mouth. Chen, Ran lamented quietly. Despite his attempted refusal, Ron eventually was taken in by the friendly atmosphere. And they spent the next hour or so puzzling and laughing their way through various wizarding foods and snacks. Like chocolate frogs. Oh, wizards have trading cards. Well yeah, I collect them. I've got about 500. I'm missing a gripper, and Ptolemy. Hey, I got Dumbles. Wah, oh you mean Dumbledore. Hey Haley, check out who I got. Oh no way. How is Patchy on a card? Not only that, even in a picture she can't get her nose out of a book. And Birdie bots every flavor beans. Oh my god, these things are hilarious. Alright, new game, new game. Bean roulette. Take one and eat it without looking what it is, and try and guess what you got. Not gonna lie. That sounds like a terrible idea, I love it. I've got a bad feeling about this. And various others. This would have gone on for some time if they didn't experience several interruptions. There was a knock on the door. And a teary round-faced boy opened it. Sorry, but have you seen a toad at all? Haley looked around, but received negatives. Nope, no toads here, she said. The boy wails. I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me. Hey, chin up, kid, have a frog instead, said Haley, proffering a chocolate frog. The boy took the frog, and gave a tiny thanks. Rand got up and walked up to the boy. And kneeling down in front of him, put a hand on his shoulder. There, how about I help you find him, would that make you feel better? The weepy boy nodded, and Rand took his hand. Behave Haley, Chen, I'll be right back. And Rand left with the boy in tow. Rand really likes kids, doesn't she? Haley said. She puts up with you, doesn't she? Chen teased. Not sure why he's so upset though. If I had brought a toad I would have lost it as soon as I could, although I brought Scabbers, so I can't talk. Ron said. Scabbers. He reached into his jacket, and pulled out a fat gray rat, who was asleep. He belonged to Percy, but I got him after Dad bought him an owl, and he's completely useless. All he does is sleep. I wouldn't say useless, said Chen, after all, it looks like there is good eating on him. Ron choked on a frog. Chen, gross. That's a rat, Haley said flatly. What? I like my animals small and crunchy, said Chen. Hedwig knows what I'm talking about. Hedwig hoots. See. Ron could only gawk. You really are a cat, aren't you? Maybe Tilda, Chen sang, her tail slowly swishing from side to side, or maybe I just like screwing with people, the world may never know. I am sure the world would rather it remain a mystery, said Ran, walking back into the compartment. But it wasn't the toadless boy that was with her, rather a bushy-haired brunette, who looked around the compartment with interest. This is Hermione Granger, I'm lending her a book or two. Miss Granger, this is Ron Weasley, the girl in the luggage rack is my assistant Chen, and this is my ward Haley Potter. I won't be a moment. Ran lifted her trunk off the rack with a wave of her hand, and popped the lid and began rummaging within. Left to her devices, the girl, Hermione, fixed her eyes on Haley. So you are Haley Potter? The girl asked. Haley beamed. Yup, that's my name, don't wear it out, or do. I like being talked about. The last part was pantomimed insultingly by Chen, although only Ron noticed this. I know all about you, of course. I got a few extra books for background reading, and you're in modern magical history, the rise and fall of the dark arts, and Grey Tea wizarding events of the 20th century. Hermione said, listing them off in quick succession, much to Haley's glee and Chen's growing horror. Hermione focused on Haley again, and recognition dawned. Aren't you the girl running down the corridor with a spider on your head? A tarantula actually, Haley said. It's like a normal spider, only bigger and hairier. You really shouldn't be doing things like that. You'll get in trouble before we even get there, said the girl, deflating Haley's enthusiasm slightly and making Chen snicker. Been there, done that, got told off, Haley said dismissively. It's no big deal. It's not as if anyone cares. Well, you'd best be careful is all. I heard that your behavior reflects on your house, and they award points on it to be tallied up at the end of the year. You won't be making friends if you spend all your time breaking rules. PFF'd, said Haley dismissively. Don't mind her, Hermione. She is very individualistic, said Ran, rejoining the conversation with several books under her arm. Despite her demeanor, she is quite intelligent. Haley looked pleased with this until, hey, what do you mean, despite my demeanor? Ran ignored her and handed Hermione the books. Feel free to keep them if you like. I have already read them, and an intellect like yours needs to be nurtured. I hope to see you at the start of term. Hermione blushed as she took the books. Much to Haley's jealousy. What do you mean, see her at the start of term? Ron turned to Haley. Didn't I tell you? In the discussion with Dumbledore, it was decided. But what was decided would have to be revealed at a later time, because the compartment door opened again. A vaguely familiar pale boy with blonde hair, flanked by two beefy kids. Haley had the feeling she had seen him before, but couldn't place where. Is it true? He said. They're saying all down the train that Haley Potter's in this compartment. So it's you, is it? Yup, that's my name. Don't wear it out, or do. I like being talked about. Haley said, while Chen mouthed, please stop asking her that, under her breath. Do I know you from somewhere? I feel like I know you from somewhere, said Haley, resting her hand on her chin. The boy looked mildly offended that Haley didn't remember, but introduced himself anyway. My name is Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. We met in Diagon Alley while we were fitting school robes. Haley thought for a minute. Oh yeah, I remember, you were that kid. Think we talked about family or something. I dunno, I was just passing time. The boy looked rather miffed at the total lack of respect. But Haley was focusing on the two other boys. Who are they? Are they your minions? You have minions. Are minions a thing we are allowed to have? He turned to Ron and Hermione. Do you guys want to be my minions? I can pay you. No you will not, said Ron, cuffing Haley on the back of the head. The action drew Malfoy's attention to the other occupants in the compartment, specifically Ron. What on earth are you? He said with barely repressed scorn. Ron regarded Malfoy with a clinical coldness. I am Ron Yakumo. I suggest you show more respect toward the unknown. She leaned forward. Because what you don't know can hurt you, a lot. Malfoy recoiled slightly as Ron's eyes flashed dangerously. She straightened up, and turned a kinder eye to Hermione. Come on. I'll walk you back to your compartment. There are some things I wish to run you through. Let's let Haley deal with her visitor. Hermione looked mildly unnerved by Ron's sudden coldness, but followed anyway. They walked past the trio at the door and out into the corridor. So anyway, what do you want? Haley said, reclining with her hands behind her head. You got some business with me. You keep some troublesome company, don't you, Potter? You best be careful, you wouldn't want to go associating with the wrong sort. I could help you in that regard. Haley smiled sweetly. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I want to associate with the wrong sort. The wrong sort are usually more fun, and I've never quite figured out what the right sort is supposed to be. I pity you if you even need to ask, said Malfoy, haughtily. The right sort are our kind, of course. Purebloods, none of that muggle-born garbage. I don't think they should even let them in. Purebloods, Haley said, cocking her head. People from the oldest magical families, like my family. You can trace our magical heritage back centuries. Malfoy said smugly. What Haley said next, however, completely knocked Malfoy's self-satisfied smirk of his face. Who cares? Excuse me, said Malfoy, both shocked and angry. I said who cares. Haley reclined further, staring at the roof. Why should I care about someone's heritage? Why does it matter if you are related to a whole bunch of dead people? Here and now is what's important. Malfoy's mouth flapped, trying to come up with some sort of retort. Ron and Chen were watching the back and forth with varying degrees of interest. With that in mind, what have you done? Said Haley, focusing. What accomplishments do you have that make you worth my time? Haley was having a riot. This kid was clearly a daddy's boy old money type. He wasn't used to being questioned on his worth. Well, what have you done then, to make you think you can talk down on me like that? Malfoy said lamely. But he almost immediately realized his mistake. While Haley couldn't use the fact that she transcended humanity at the age of 6 and became a creature of pure magic and malice, thanks to Dumbledore, she had another one. She put her finger on her lips in mock thought. Well, I did kill that Lord Voldemort person when I was a baby. So there's that. She silently enjoyed the fact that many of the occupants in the room flinched at the mention of his name. Ron looked especially odd. Malfoy seemed to flounder for a bit, but recovered quickly, and his eyes narrowed. I'd be careful if I were you, Potter. He said slowly. Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them, either. They made the wrong sort of enemies, and look what happened to them. Haley considered her options. She couldn't let a threat slide after all. Perhaps something small won't hurt. She stood up and faced Malfoy, with her back to Ron. She didn't want to spook the redhead too much, as he seemed an alright sort. Thank you for the advice, Malfoy, but you should be careful too. Like my mentor said, ignorance is dangerous. She leaned in and smiled her signature, toothy grin. Her eyes emitting a soft green glow. What came out next was a sinister whisper, and I don't need family ties to make your life a living hell. Malfoy and his flunkies backed off in shock, and decided on a hasty retreat. Nice Tilda, Chen said, who had watched the entire confrontation from the luggage racks, grinning. Nice improv, I could practically hear him shitting himself. I know, Haley said, sitting down and having a giggle. Ron stared at Haley, not sure what he just witnessed, or felt for that matter. The petite girl had somehow managed to intimidate 3 boys, all of whom were bigger than her. And not only that, at that moment, Ron had felt a chill that had caused the hairs on the back of his neck to stand on end. He didn't know what, but something felt incredibly off about Haley Potter. And after that he didn't dare to even ask. At that moment, Ran returned. She didn't say anything, she simply sat down and began to read again. Ron, looking at the company Haley keeps, starts to wonder, for the first, but not the last time, if she is even human. Bonus. What do you mean, my Walkman won't work at Hogwarts? Said Haley, utterly horrified. Well, it's not just Walkman. Said Hermione, in Hogwarts: A History, it states quite clearly that the school is warded to prevent Muggle technology from working on the grounds. You really should read it, it is fascinating. Haley's horror grew, she turned to Ran, her eyes pleading for help. Ran sighed and shut her book. I was already aware of this and have had all my electronics shielded, I suggest you do the same. But I don't know how. Haley wailed. Then I suggest you get back to reading that book I gave you. Ran said dryly. It has a chapter on counter-warding you might find helpful. Haley pouted, and picked up the book, grumbling to herself irritably. Can I read that after you're done with it? That sounds really interesting, said Hermione. Chen was too busy laughing to make an input to the conversation. First years, this way. First years, came Hagrid's booming voice. I guess that's your cue, said Chen, see you later. Do behave for Hagrid, won't you? Ran said, I will see you for the sorting. Haley bid them goodbye and went up to the friendly giant. Hello Haley, you doing all right then? Hagrid said, jovially. Doing fine so far, the train was a hoot, said Haley, hugging his leg. If you like the train, wait till you get to Hogwarts. Hagrid said, before continuing to call for first years. After he had everyone, he led them through a path in the woods nearby, eventually leading them to the edge of a great lake, with an admittedly impressive castle perched on the cliffs on the other side. Only 4 to a boat, Hagrid said, pointing to a small fleet of boats on the shore. Haley hopped into a boat, and was followed by Ron, Hermione and the boy with the toad. After making sure everyone was in, Hagrid in his own boat, willed the fleet forward. And they glided across the water towards the castle. Even Haley was silent as she drank in the castle's silent majesty. Heads down everyone, said Hagrid, as they neared the cliffs. Everyone duck. Head down as they passed into a cave curtained with vines, into a small underground harbor. After they had disembarked, and the boy's toad had been returned to him yet again, they walked up a passage that eventually led outside. And walked up the steps to the giant front doors. Hagrid knocked on the doors, and it was answered by McGonagall, the woman who had delivered Haley's letter. The first years, Professor McGonagall. Hagrid said. Thank you Hagrid, I will take them from here. She said. After everyone was inside, she led the procession of first years across a grand entry hall, and into a small side room. Welcome to Hogwarts, said Professor McGonagall. The start of term banquet will begin shortly, but before you take your seats in the Great Hall, you will be sorted into your houses. The sorting is a very important ceremony because, while you are here, your house will be something like your family within Hogwarts. You will have classes with the rest of your house, sleep in your house dormitory, and spend free time in your house common room. The 4 houses are called Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Each house has its own noble history and each has produced outstanding witches and wizards. While you are at Hogwarts, your triumphs will earn your house points, while any rule-breaking will lose house points. At the end of the year, the house with the most points is awarded the House Cup. A great honor. I hope each of you will be a credit to whichever house becomes yours. The sorting ceremony will take place in a few minutes in front of the rest of the school. I suggest you all smarten yourselves up as much as you can while you are waiting." She paused to examine the throng of students critically, before concluding with, "I shall return when we are ready for you, please wait quietly." What followed was a few minutes of silence, as everyone stewed on McGonagall's words. Haley wondered mutely what the sorting could be, before shrugging. It was probably some sort of mystical, pick a name out of a hat, scenario. There was some screams behind her, and she turned to see about 20 ghosts float through the wall, so caught up in their argument that they didn't notice the collection of goggling students. "Forgive and forget, I say, we ought to give him a second chance," said a rather portly little monk-looking fellow. "My dear friar, haven't we given Peeves all the chances he deserves?" said a rather dashing man in Elizabethan dress. "He gives us all a bad name, and you know, he's not really even a ghost. I say, what are you all doing here?" he said, noticing the first years. Haley wondered if anyone else was going to answer, but the monk answered first. "New students, about to be sorted, I suppose." Haley rolled her eyes at the continuing silence, and decided to answer. "That's right, I'm Haley Potter. Is this school haunted?" the Elizabethan ghost said. "I suppose so, but I prefer the term, spirits in residence, as it is not as though we are unwelcome." "That's neat," said Haley, enjoying everyone else's stares as she openly conversed with the ghosts. "So you just live here then?" "That's right, we also help out whenever we can," said the monk. "I must say, most first years are more put off by us ghosts. Have you met ghosts before?" "Oh yeah," said Haley dismissively, waving her hand. "Every spring Yukari-sama takes me to visit Yuyuko-sama for a flower viewing, and she's a ghost princess." The monk gives a good-natured laugh. "A ghost princess, aren't you a well-connected sort?" At that moment McGonagall had returned. "Move along now. The sorting is about to start." "Pleasure chatting with you," said the monk as the ghosts float through the wall, giving a cheery wave. "I hope to see you in Hufflepuff, my old house, don't you know." "We'll see," Haley said as she waved goodbye, and only after he had left did Haley realize he never gave his name. "Now, form a line," Professor McGonagall told the first years, "and follow me." Haley obediently got into line, and was led out of the room, and back into the entrance hall, and then into the Great Hall. While it wasn't nearly as impressive as Patchouli's library, few things were. It was still a grand sight, with hundreds of floating candles, a starry ceiling, and 4 huge tables chocked full of students. They were led up to the front of the hall, where a 5th table, where what she assumed the teachers were sitting, and for some reason so was ran, and they were lined up in front of it. Haley looked over the crowd of faces, with curiosity, and barely repressed eagerness. So many people, all looking at her, kinda, at least. So starstruck, she almost missed McGonagall place down an old pointed hat on a stool in front of them. But like everyone else, she looked down at it, her brow furrowing. Were they literally going to be pulling their name out of a hat? That was before it started singing. "Oh, you may not think I'm pretty. But don't judge on what you see. I'll eat myself if you can find a smarter hat than me. You can keep your bowlers black. Your top hat's sleek and tall. For I'm the Hogwarts sorting hat. And I can cap them all. There's nothing hidden in your head. The sorting hat can't see. So try me on and I will tell you where you ought to be. You might belong in Gryffindor, where dwell the brave at heart. Their daring, nerve, and chivalry set Gryffindors apart. You might belong in Hufflepuff, where they are just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs are true and unafraid of toil. Or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, if you've a ready mind, where those of wit and learning will always find their kind. Or perhaps in Slytherin, you'll make your real friends. Those cunning folk use any means to achieve their ends. So put me on. Don't be afraid, and don't get in a flap. You're in safe hands, though I have none. For I'm a thinking cap." While she was amused at the singing hat at first, the thought of it peering into her head didn't really sit well with her. She looked to Rand for guidance. The fox woman gave a meaningful nod and a pointed look. Only slightly reassured, but nevertheless placated, she turned back and joined the applause. She couldn't help but snort when Ron said, "So we've just got to try on the hat. I'll kill Fred, he was going on about wrestling a troll." When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool to be sorted," said McGonagall, now holding out a long roll of parchment. "Abbott, Hannah." Thus what followed was a long procession of people's names being called out. Haley didn't really pay much attention who went where, only really waiting for her turn. Sometimes the hat takes minutes to sort, sometimes seconds. She did note that Hermione became a Gryffindor, and so did that boy with the toad. Neville apparently. Neither seemed particularly brave or daring. Maybe it's just random, and it's only fooling us into thinking it matters. Regardless, Malfoy and his mooks ended up in Slytherin. He did say all his family end up there. Maybe it's predetermined then, and the whole hat is a sham. Not that it really matters to Haley either way. Wherever she goes, she was going to make the most of it. She wished it would hurry up though. Finally her name was called, and it filled her with no small satisfaction to see the whispers spread across the hall. She strode to the stove and sat down like a queen would on her throne and put the hat on. My, whatever do we have here?" came a small voice in her ear. "The first time I've seen something of your ilk in a very long time." "Oh, so you do read minds then," Haley thought. "County incidentally, if you blab anything to anyone, I'll burn you." "No need to worry, both your thoughts and these little chats are strictly between us. My only job is to sort you to the best of my abilities," the hat said, seemingly unfazed by the threat. "And that is the real question, what do I do with you? I can put you nearly anywhere, yet you will practically fit in nowhere. While you are poking through my head to try and figure out my seating arrangements," Haley thought sardonically, mind answering a question. "You want to know hat qualities Hermione and Neville had that made them Gryffindor material," the hat said. "While I can't quite give you the specifics of those two, confidentiality and all that, I can let you in on a little secret. Secret only because most don't think to ask. The sorting also needs to consider what kind of traits you want for yourself, who you admire. It is less about who you are, and more about who you want to be." Haley pondered this. It was a good question. Who did she admire? And where might they fit in this school? There was Reimu and Marissa for a start. Despite around her age and only human, they both far outstripped her in magical power and skill. Marissa could go nearly anywhere. She had a natural intellect and curiosity befitting a Ravenclaw. She was beyond brave, and some might say reckless, suggesting a Gryffindor. Ambitious was an understatement, meaning she might make a decent Slytherin. And she is one of the hardest working people Haley knew, making Hufflepuff a good home for her. Reimu on the other hand doesn't seem like she would fit anywhere in particular. She is incurious, slothful, fearless, which is not the same as being brave, and her only real ambition in life is to drink tea in her shrine. And get some regular donations, and just maybe Gensokyo not burning down while she wasn't looking, that would be great too. Neither of those were particularly helpful to her, so she moved on to mailing. Not really much to think about there. Hufflepuff, hardworking, patient, loyal, and kind. Might have been Gryffindor in her youth, but who's to say? But while she loved the gatekeeper of the SDM, she can't really say she wants to be her. Not much to think about Remelia either. Slytherin, she'd practically be running the school by the first year. Next she moved on to those closest to her, starting with Chen and Ran. Slytherin and Ravenclaw respectively. Chen is naturally devious and cunning, although she would probably feel more kinship with the Hufflepuffs, as cats tend to gravitate to those kind of people. And Ran has a love for both teaching and learning. But the person she admired above all others, the one she loved above all else. "Well, I suppose that settles it," said the hat. "Only one place for someone like her. But are you sure that is where you want to be? I almost guarantee you won't fit in. That house is rather set in its ways. And you will probably make more enemies than friends. It would be like unleashing a mongoose in a snake den." Haley thought about it, and shrugged. "I like green." The hat laughed, and not just in her ear. It rang out across the hall. And then it spoke out loud. "Very well, for want of something worse. Slytherin." There was an eerie silence after the proclamation. Haley stood up and handed the hat to McGonagall, who was giving her a very strange look. She then turned to the rather stunned student body, and said, while tilting her head to make sure her scar was clearly visible, "Well, what is it? Do I have something on my face?" And gave a cheeky grin. This managed to unfreeze the audience. Some people even laughed despite the terrible joke. And then the Slytherin table applauded, although somehow managing to do it in a way that sounded smug. She took a bow, and then skipped over happily. She took a seat with the other first-year girls, next to a girl, she thinks her name is Lily Moon or something. A shy-looking girl with glasses and black hair done up in a ponytail. And the sorting recommenced. She watched with disinterest as the last 4 people were sorted. Ron getting into Gryffindor. She clapped politely and got some strange looks from the other Slytherins for doing so, and a guy whose name starts with Z ended up in Slytherin, but she had stopped paying attention by this point. Finally, both the list and the hat were taken away, and Dumbledore got to his feet. He wore a large welcoming smile as he looked out over the student body. "Welcome," he said. "Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words. And here they are. Nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Thank you." Haley snorted, and clapped loudly. It seems that her impression of him from her party was correct. He seemed like a fun guy. As if by magic, in fact, it probably was. All the empty dishes in the middle of the table were filled with food. She clapped her hands together and said, "Itadakimasu," quietly to herself, bowing her head, before she began helping herself to a whole chicken. What was that you did?" Came a nervous, but polite question from her left. Haley turned to her left, to where Lily Moon was sitting, and fidgeting nervously. "It's itadakimasu, it's a Japanese custom. It's basically acknowledging and being thankful for the food you have been given," Haley said, taking a bite out of a sausage. "Oh, do you live in Japan then?" she asked. "Not yet, although Yukari-sama says that I can after I'm finished with Hogwarts," said Haley, buttering some potatoes. "Who? My guardian?" I said, anticipating the question, before eating a whole slice of bacon. "She's Japanese. Are you very hungry?" Lily asked politely, watching me eat with wide eyes. "Hunger is an integral part of my being," Haley said, pocketing a handful of peppermint humbugs. Several nearby Slytherins kept occasionally glancing at Haley's eating with confusion, and in some cases disgust. Wondering how such a small, petite girl could be eating so much food. Malfoy, who was sitting some distance away, looked like he wanted to comment, possibly insult, T couldn't do so without being rude to everyone else. Haley had anticipated this, which is why she had sat so far away. She didn't feel like bantering over dinner. Someone seemed to be more interested than confused though. "So you are this Haley Potter I've heard so much about." A girl sat next to her in the empty seat, just as the main course had disappeared, to be replaced with dessert. A brunette, with one might call a rather average appearance. She was rather pretty, but in an emphatically unremarkable way. Haley grinned. "That's my name, don't wear it out. Or do, I like being talked about." She laughed. "That's so. Well, mind telling me a bit about yourself?" Haley paused during heaping about 7 different flavors of ice cream and a pile of jelly on her plate. "Depends, what do you want to know? I guess first would be how you eat so much while staying so small." She smiled jovially. "Just perks of being me, I guess," Haley said. Technically true. Haley's body sustained itself on magic, not food or water. Just like a magician Yukai, but she is comparatively unstable, so her body consumes more magic than it can produce or absorb, at least outside Gensokyo, as the ambient mana is far thinner outside the barrier. To compensate, Yukari tweaked her body to convert food into raw mana to keep her going. Because of this, she ate as much as she can when she could. One of the perks of this is that mana is non-fattening. The girl kept smiling, but there was a slight hint that she was disappointed with the lack of answer. Still she went on with her questioning. The shy Lily Moon seemed to be pretending not to listen out of politeness. "Lucky you, I guess. I also heard you live with muggles, how's that?" the girl said. Haley's brow furrowed, while she was annoyed that the subject had been turned to her family. Something in the girl's expression suggested something, almost as if she was fishing for information. Haley was intrigued, so she decided to bite. "I'm afraid that information is out of date. I left that lot years ago. I live with Yukari and Ran-sama these days." Oh, it seems that the girl was looking for something else, so she tried a different approach. "But you did live with muggles, right? What were they like?" Haley wasn't sure where she was going with this, but was interested to find out. "To be honest, they were a pretty horrid lot. They hated me." Locked me in the cupboard under the stairs, malnourished me, stuff like that. I dropped them like bad rubbish. Lily Moon gasped quietly. Is that so? Said the girl, still smiling, but a certain degree of her enthusiasm had been snuffed. She was doing a pretty good job of hiding it, but Haley was used to such deception, so it still showed. I guess with that kinda treatment, you wouldn't be too fond of muggles, huh? Haley finally realized what the girl was trying to figure out. Interesting. Haley decided to throw her a bone. Nah, I don't hate them, at least not all of them. Oh, the girl exclaimed, and Haley could see the uptick in her demeanor. Nah, I don't think much of most people until I meet them. Haley said, and I was taught to judge on action, what you do, not who you are. So until I meet all muggles. Haley air quoted the word, I can't say whether I hate them or not. An interesting way of looking at it, said the girl, relief showing through the small cracks in her facade. Haley decided to show her hand. She leaned in and spoke in a voice so low that only the girl could hear. So don't worry. You are safe with me. The girl briefly looked shocked but quickly regained control of her face. Don't know what you mean. You might be good, but I'm better. Haley whispered, before pulling back. By the way, I don't think I got your name, stranger. The girl paused for a moment. Before extending a hand. Name's Sophie. Haley, but you knew that. Haley said. Acting on a hunch, she said, us mongoose gotta stick together, right? The tension dropped as she laughed. It told you that too, huh? Quote. That it did, although probably for a different reason. Haley said. The both shared a knowing grin, at the expense of poor confused observer Lily, before returning to dessert. Not bad, thought Haley. Only one meal into her school year and she had already found a potential ally. This year might not be too bad after all. Not too long after dessert was finished. Dumbledore stood up yet again. And the hall fell silent. Ahem, just a few more words now that we are all fed and watered. I have a few start of term notices to give you. First years should note that the forest on the grounds is forbidden to all pupils. And a few of our older students would do well to remember that as well. A rather pointed glance was thrown at the Gryffindor table. I have also been asked by Mr. Filch, the caretaker, to remind you all that no magic should be used between classes in the corridors. Quidditch trials will be held in the second week of the term. Anion. Interested in playing for their house teams should contact Madam Hooch. I am also happy to announce that there will be a new extracurricular activity available to all students. Due to some concern, Ed parties worrying about Hogwarts' basic curriculum, or lack thereof, I have decided to re-examine our stance on what should and should not be taught at Hogwarts. This declaration seemed to be met with mild confusion. But he wasn't finished. Therefore, I would like to introduce you to Ran Yakumo, who shall be teaching the new, general knowledge, classes. Ran stood up and bowed to the hall, and sat down, and only then did Haley notice Chen sitting in front of her on the table in cat form. There was murmuring as everyone took in the strange appearance of the new teacher. Dumbledore raised his hand, and the murmuring ceased. While her classes will not play into your grades for the year, they may prove invaluable to students who wish to polish their mind, as well as their magic, I sug. You might all take some time to benefit from her extensive knowledge. Bear in mind that despite her class not being official, she has the full privileges of a Hogwarts teacher, and that includes T. He ability to take and give house points, so treat her with the same respect you would to any of your teachers. Notices will be posted in your common room tomorrow for any who are interested. Any who wish to learn more about what will be taught are welcome to seek out Miss Yakumo. Although she was asked me to tell you that any direct inquiries to her species will be rewarded with a loss of house points. So that's what she meant. Haley muttered. Sophie looked at her quizzically. I'll tell you later. And finally, I must tell you that this year, the third floor corridor on the right-hand is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. Haley and Sophie exchanged glances, as did many others in the hall, but no further explanation seemed to be coming. After a pause, Dumbledore spoke again. And now, before we go to bed, let us sing the school song. He cheered happily, and all the other teachers' expressions suddenly became rather wooden. With a flick of his wand, he conjured Golden Ribbon, which formed lyrics to a song. Everyone pick their favorite tune, said Dumbledore, and off we go. What followed was an absolute cacophony, that went something like this. Hogwarts, Hogwarts. Hoggy warty Hogwarts. Teach us something please. Whether we be old and bald, or young with scabby knees. Our heads could do with filling. With some interesting stuff. For now they're bare and full of air. Dead flies and bits of fluff. So teach us things worth knowing. Bring back what we've forgot. Just do your best, we'll do the rest. And learn until our brains all rot. Haley was practically wheezing the last few lines as she tried to withhold her laughter, as he listened to the twins sing it to the tune of a funeral march she wished she had been present in. Mind enough to do something clever like that, maybe next year. After they were finished there was an applause, with Dumbledore's being the loudest. Ah, music, he said, wiping his eyes. A magic beyond all we do here. And now, bedtime. Off you trot. With that the Slytherin first years were gathered by a prefect girl and ushered out of the Great Hall, and into the entrance hall, and down a small flight of steps down into the winding passages of the castle dungeon. There they were taken to a rather unremarkable bit of wall. The prefect then spoke a password, malice, and a passage revealed itself. The Slytherin common room was a long hall of carved dark stone, with dark windows, despite being underground. There were various islands of leather-upholstered seats and couches, and a large fireplace. The lighting was low, but not too low as to be difficult to navigate. There was tapestries of various figures, probably of some historical significance. It felt like a place of dark deeds and dealings. Cool, Haley said. The prefect stopped the procession. Now before I can send you all off to bed. The dorms here are slightly different to other houses, not that you would know about the others. The dorm rooms are 3 people each. There are 11 of you, 6 girls and 5 boys, so please split into groups of 3 or 2, and then I will assign you an empty room. Choose wisely, as SA will be your roommates for the rest of the year, if not the rest of your time at Hogwarts. Sophie and Haley immediately took a step closer to each other, not unnoticed by the prefect. You two together already. Good work. A Slytherin should know who their friends and allies are. She tossed the 2 a key each. Room 42, girls' dorms are on the left. Your things will be there by the time you arrive. Sophie and Haley left just as Malfoy and his cronies were handed their room keys. After they found their room, they slipped in and locked the door behind them. It was a nice room, albeit a bit cold, like everything down here. With 3 4-poster beds each with their own dresser and bedside table, with some small writing desks to one side. There was even a small heating stove above a dark window. Probably a necessity in these chilly dungeons, although it was unlit. Haley immediately conjured some witchfire, a trick she learned from Chen, and rammed it into the stove, offering both warmth and an eerie green glow. Neat trick, said Sophie. Thanks, said Haley, who had opened her trunk and was rummaging for her pajamas. So here we are. Yup, Sophie said, doing the same. I must say you are a pretty smooth operator. Haley said conversationally, not many would suspect that you were new to all this. Sophie shrugged. I did my homework, blending in is a talent of mine. Needs a bit of work if you ask me. I guess so, you saw through me pretty easily. Still, a pretty ballsy move if you ask me, said Haley stripping out of her robes. I'm not exactly the most subtle person, hell. I'm practically a celebrity, hanging with me might get you some attention. That's what you think, said Sophie, you like to stand out, take the spotlight. No one will really take notice of me when I'm standing next to you, and my identity will become almost in tandem with yours. They won't see Sophie Roper, they'll see that girl Potter hangs out with. And when I'm not with you I'll be practically invisible. Just how I like it. Not to mention your name will have a lot of weight around here. People expect big things from you, and unlike most of the Slytherins you are not as prejudiced and pretty easygoing. A powerful and reliable ally for me to have. Ooh, you are good, said Haley. But apart from excellent company, what do I get from this arrangement? Oh, I don't know, she said coyly. I'm also an excellent listener, and you wouldn't believe the things people say or do when in the presence of an invisible girl. You sure have a way with words, Haley said. She zipped up her pajamas and turned back to face Sophie, extending her hand again. I'm sold, put her here partner. She finished putting on her nightie, and turned to return the gesture, but laughed as soon as she saw Haley in her dog-themed onesie. What are you wearing? Don't diss my onesie. Haley said, pouting. Sorry, said Sophie, and took the handshake. There was a knock on the door. And Haley went to answer. It was the prefect again. She rose her eyebrows at Haley's attire, but didn't comment, and instead said, Sorry to bother you, but you have another roommate. She gestured to Lily Moon, who was hanging apologetically to one side. The other girls formed a group of 3, so she has to join your group. The prefect seemed rather unimpressed at this. Haley looked at the girl in question, who looked rather miserable, and then to Sophie, who shrugged. All right, come on in I guess. Good, now if you excuse me, I'm going to bed, the prefect said, before walking off, muttering something. Sorry, Lily said, stepping into the room. Don't worry about it, Haley said, shrugging. I guess a wallflower like you would have a bit of trouble getting into a group. The girl couldn't really refute this and nodded glumly. Hey, don't let it get you down, have a peppermint humbug, said Haley, putting one in Lily's hand. Well, you would probably do better with us than those other girls anyway. Bunch of snobs, said Sophie, putting a hand around her shoulder, so welcome to room 42. You're in good hands. Thank you, said Lily softly. That's your bed over there. Haley pointed to the unclaimed bed, which now had a new trunk at the foot of it. Ain't magic convenient, and stifled a yawn. Now if you excuse me, I'm gonna hit the hay. Yeah, it's about that time, said Sophie, sitting down on her bed. Turn off the lamp when you go to bed. Lily watched as the two climbed into bed, and released a breath she was holding. At least they seemed nice. Haley's first week of classes pottered along unremarkably. To her glee, her celebrity status was not much of an exaggeration, as people seemed to go out of their way just to see her, peering into classes, and doubling back in hallways. And she soaked up the attention. It was a good thing she had Sophie, who, true to her word, became practically unnoticed while hiding within Haley's much stronger presence. Or she might never get to classes otherwise. The school seemed to be designed to be hard to navigate, with strange fake doors, moving staircases, not-so-secret passageways, and an irritating poltergeist. On top of this, Haley was having a bit of trouble with the school's magic classes. Wizard magic, in Haley's opinion, was irritatingly precise and inflexible, a far cry from the elegant and flowing magics taught to her by Yukari. Or the bombastic and wild magics she had picked up from Marissa. More than once she has over or undercharged what should be simple spells in frustration and causing minor accidents, including setting fire to a match she was supposed to be turning into a needle during transfiguration. It was a good thing she was enjoying all the attention, because all this waving was starting to rub her the wrong way. There was also classes like astrology and herbology, which thanks to Rand's extensive curriculum, Haley had no real difficulty in. Indeed, for astrology she was hideously overqualified. And then there was history of magic, which Haley liked a lot. It was dull as dishwater, but the atmosphere was perfect for napping, and Sophie wrote very extensive notes that she let Haley copy. Defense against the dark arts was a total joke though. The teacher, Professor Quirrell, was a nervous wreck. It was clear to anyone who talked to him that he wasn't fit to defend anything, much less teach anyone on how. Haley wondered if he was simply a placeholder, and the school was looking for someone more qualified. Haley could think of about 5 off the top of her head, and 2 of them were her age. There was also Malfoy, who seems to have taken a serious dislike toward Haley, despite being in the same house. He takes almost any chance to belittle her, which Haley was all too happy to return. It seems that there was a divide that was appearing between the first-year Slytherins, those who liked Haley with her infectious charm, charisma, fame and cuteness, and those who sided with Malfoy due to his family, ideals and money. The older Slytherins didn't seem to get involved apart from watching with amusement whenever Haley and Malfoy met in the common room or corridors, and traded words and insults. On the first Friday morning during breakfast, Hedwig arrived with the Morning Post, with a note from Hagrid. She scratched Hedwig under the chin as she read the letter. Dear Haley, I know you get Friday afternoons off, so would you like to come and have a cup of tea with me around 3? I want to hear all about your first week. Send us an answer back with Hedwig. Hagrid. Who's Hagrid? Sophie asked, reading over Haley's shoulder. He's the groundskeeper around here, you know, the big guy who took us on the boats. Haley said, penning a re. Sponse, she had no idea why they insisted on quills when ballpoints were a thing. You know him then? Sophie asked. Yeah, I met him on my birthday. While I was buying my school stuff, he bought me Hedwig as a present. He apparently knew my folks, may they rest in peace, said Haley, giving Hedwig both the reply and some bacon for her trouble. He's a pretty cool guy. I guess if I got an owl as pretty as that, I'd be pretty fond of him too, said Sophie, watching Hedwig fly off. Mind if I tag along? Sure, said Haley, who had gotten used to Sophie tagging along wherever, at least when she doesn't disappear off to who knows where. Came a meek little voice from beside her. Haley turned to her other little tagalong. Lily Moon put other wallflowers to shame. If Sophie could be considered invisible, Lily was downright non-existent. She had taken to following around the pair, for reasons Haley didn't know. And unlike Sophie, Lily was practically glued to Haley. Not that Haley really minded having her around, as she was mild-mannered enough, and was occasionally helpful, especially in charms, which she seemed to be ahead of the skill curve, at least among Slytherins. You can come too if you like, Haley said, already guessing the question. Lily smiled gratefully. It seemed that whatever the reason, she really wanted to be around Haley. They finished breakfast and stood up. So what have we got now? Haley said as they walked out the Great Hall. Double potions class with Gryffindor, said Sophie, it's down in the dungeons. The head of Slytherin, Professor Snape teaches it. Apparently he favors Slytherins so it should be easy. Cool, Haley said, putting her hands behind her head. She had never really cared for alchemy too much, at least whenever Marissa wasn't involved. Marissa did fun stuff, and there was a lot of mushrooms and explosions involved. However, she had quite a good knowledge of chemistry, thanks once again to Ran. Outside the classroom, they met not only with most of the first-year Slytherins, but the Gryffindors too, including the ones Haley met on the train. Oh hey Ron, Haley said, walking up to the tall redhead, haven't seen you since the sorting. Grats on getting into Gryffindor by the way. Ron looked at Haley uncertainly, as if he wasn't quite sure what to make of this, but said, yeah, thanks I guess. What's with that reaction? Haley said, getting pouty, come on. Just because I'm in a house full of snakes doesn't mean I bite. Haley stopped and thought, at least not often anyway. Ron laughed nervously. Internally. After the little episode on the train, and Haley's unusual sorting, Ron was more and more uncertain about what to think of the petite girl. She seemed friendly and cheerful, but that didn't seem to change the fact that she felt incredibly off. Even now as she giggles at her own joke, she felt dangerous. At this point Malfoy decided to interject. What on earth are you doing? By associating with that sort of riff-raff, you make the rest of us look bad. I know it might be difficult but at least try to have some standards, he said with a sneer. Several of the other Slytherins sniggered. Haley was not impressed. And I asked for your opinion, when? Haley said, hands on hips, geez, why do you gotta be such a Malfoy? Malfoy stopped smirking. And what is that supposed to mean? Haley tilted her head, and starts counting off on her fingers. You know, unpleasant, rude, self-entitled, butts in when he isn't wanted, etc., you know, your general state of being. She made a shooing motion. So if you could just stop being, that would be great. Haley had been saving that one for about 3 days, and the look on Malfoy's face made it well worth it. The was sniggers from a few Slytherins and most of the Gryffindors. To salve the wound, Haley licked her finger and put it on Malfoy's shoulder, and made a hissing noise with her teeth. This action however meant to confuse Malfoy more than anything. What's that supposed to mean? You figure it out, said Haley, disappointed by the lack of reaction, walking over to rejoin her friends in line. Leaving Ma Lfoy to try and figure out just how he had been insulted. Ron knew one thing for sure, Haley was far more tolerable than Malfoy. Potion class started with Professor Snape taking attendance. He was a tall man, with dark hair and cold black eyes, which swept across the room as he ran down the list. He stopped when he reached Haley. Ah yes, our new celebrity, he said softly. Haley shared a glance with Sophie, who shrugged. He finished the roll, and he put it aside. You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making, he began. He spoke in barely more than a whisper, but they caught every word. As there is little foolish wand waving here, many of you will hardly believe this is magic. I don't expect you will really understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes. The delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind, ensnaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stop or death. If you aren't as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach. Haley could practically hear that girl Hermione's eagerness from here. Weasley, said Snape suddenly. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? What? Said Ron. Answer the question. Snape snapped. Don't know, sir. Ron mumbled, ears going red with embarrassment. Why am I not surprised? Snape sneered. Before rounding on another Gryffindor. You, Finnegan, where would you look if I told you to find me a bazaar? Haley watched disinterestedly, resting her head in her hand. As the Irish kid got dressed down by Snape. He was one of those teachers She let her gaze drift to Hermione, who had her hand high in the air. Not particularly bright of her, to be honest. Snape clearly wasn't looking for answers, just people to show up. Of course he isn't going to ask you, as you clearly know all this stuff. Haley wonders if anyone else is going to be on the chopping block. Potter. Snape called out, rounding on her. What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? Said Haley, straightening up in surprise. Me. There isn't any other Potter here. Don't think you will get special treatment in this class, girl. Snape said. Haley could hear Malfoy and his goons snickering in the background. So much for him favoring Slytherins. Unluckily for Snape, Haley knew this one. They are the same plant, sir. Its scientific genus is Aconitum and there are over 250 species found mostly in the mountainous regions of the northern hemisphere. And is famed for its toxicity. Other names include aconite, leopard's bane, mousebane, women's bane, devil's helmet, queen of poisons, or blue rocket. This stopped Malfoy's laughter. Hail. EY shared a quiet low five under the desk with Sophie. If Snape was surprised by the comprehensive answer, it didn't show. Very well, but at least try to pay attention when I ask you a question. Next time I expect an immediate answer. I do not appreciate lollygagging. For future reference, asphodel and wormwood make a sleeping potion so powerful it is known as the draught of living death. A bezoa. R is a stone taken from the stomach of a goat and it will save you from most poisons. Well, why aren't you all copying that down? As everyone rummaged for quills and parchment, Haley watched Snape with something borderlining interest. He didn't like her, that much was clear, but there was something else under there. Something only a creature like Haley could pick up. Grudge. Deep, heavy, grudge. Something about Haley rubbed Snape entirely the wrong way. Pissed. Haley, are you okay? Sophie whispered while Snape's back was turned, you're kinda breathing heavily. Haley forced her breathing under control. She had gotten too excited. And it had started to show. I'm fine, said Haley, just spaced out a bit. Sophie didn't look convinced, but held her tongue as class commenced. Class passé. Deep pretty unremarkably as they made a potion for curing boils. The only incident worth noting was the Toad Boy somehow melting his cauldron, and getting covered in angry boils. After that, both Haley and Sophie decided to be a lot more careful, and keep a respectable distance from their cauldron. The incident had left Snape rather irritated, and the look Snape shot Haley was as if he wanted to blame her somehow for the boy's problem. But she was sitting too far away. And there it was again, delicious grudge. Haley swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Haley, are you sure you're okay? Sophie said. Fine, why do you ask? Haley said, adjusting her collar. Well, your eyes for a start. Sophie said. Haley blinked, before giving her temple a light slap. Blinking rapidly, she forced her eyes to lose their predatory slits. Sorry, they do that sometimes. Haley said lamely, her mind too full of fog to come up with anything better. If Sophie was concerned before, she was downright suspicious now. Nevertheless, she held her tongue. At the end of the session, Snape dismissed them, and everyone filed out of class. All except Haley. You coming? Sophie said. Give me a sec, said Haley, I want to ask the professor something. Can you wait for me outside? Lily looked like she wanted to say something. But Sophie covered her mouth and gave a winning smile. Sure, we'll be right outside. She frog-marched Lily out. Haley walked up to Snape. What is it, Potter? Snape said, not looking up from tidying up his desk. Please keep it brief. I have to prepare for another class, and I do not wish to waste my time. You hate me, don't you? Haley said, grinning. Why? Excuse me, said Snape looking up. You heard me just fine, said Haley. Why do you hate me? Snape stared long and hard at Haley. Even if this was the case, why should I bother telling you? Haley shrugged. Whether you like it or not, you are my teacher, and my head of house. You are stuck with me for about 7 years. We might as well clear the air, find out exactly where we stand with one another. Haley couldn't hide the excitement in her voice. Snape kept staring. And I suppose you won't leave me alone until I tell you. Haley nodded. Snape sighed. Well then, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it's not you I hate, rather your late father. We had what one might call a mutual dislike, and then he had the poor manners to die. I am probably not the first to tell you that you have inherited 1 or 2 traits from him. I am merely taking out my pent-up aggression toward your father, sorry to say. Oh, said Haley, who couldn't hide her disappointment. Yes. Oh, said Snape, returning to organize his desk. Sorry to burst your self-important bubble, now do you mind running allo? Want to make it personal? Haley said suddenly. Excuse me, said Snape, looking up again. I'd rather not be a proxy for your issues with my dad, Haley said, starting to weave her powers of hatred into her speech. So how about we make it official? Haley leaned forward, presenting a cheek. Come on, hit me. Snape leaned back. What? Come on, punch me, slap me, curse me, whatever. I'm a tough girl, I can take it. Haley said, tapping her cheek, and grinning madly. I won't tell neither. If you want a beef, I'm more than happy to oblige. There was a pause, the only sound being Haley's elevated breathing. Come on, do it ya wuss. You said I remind you of my dad, so this should be easy for you. Come on, hit me, hate me. She intensified her powers, attempting to overwhelm Snape's restraint. SNA. Pay stared down at Haley as if he'd just seen her for the first time. Indeed, he wasn't sure quite what he was seeing or feeling from the child, especially with the red haze descending upon his vision. He shook his head to clear the strange fog that had descended on his mind. He had no idea where Haley had gotten this kind of advanced mental magic from, or why she was using it on him. But decided whatever this situation was, it needed to be diffused. He did the only thing he could think of. I'm afraid, Miss Potter, that I can never truly hate you. At least not in the way you want me to. Snape said, surprisingly gently. Haley blinked, not expecting this. Even after all that power, he still wasn't going to hit her. She regained some of her own restraint and straightened up, still panting. He then asked the only question she could think of, why not? Snape sighed. Because you also remind me too much of your mother, for me to ever truly hate you. With this, Haley's fire was extinguished. My mother. Yes, your mother, she was a dear friend, once upon a time, said Snape. Do you get the picture, or do I have to spell it out for you? Haley shook her head. No, I get the picture. Good, said Snape. Now kindly get out of my classroom, before I throw you out. Haley sighed, yes sir, and turned to leave. I guess I'll leave him alone, muttered Haley as she closed the door behind her. Just her luck. The damn man loved her mother. Hey Haley, how was it? Sophie said, cheerfully. A little too cheerfully, Haley thought. Now that she was thinking clearly, there was no way Sophie didn't eavesdrop on that entire conversation. Haley wondered if she might have to blow her secret early just to get Sophie to keep her mouth shut. Not that she would mind, but she doesn't want to risk disappointing Yukari by blowing it so early. But for the time being she seemed content not to ask, and the rest of the morning passed uneventfully, until it was time to see Hagrid. Elking across the grounds to the large hut on the edge of the forest. Haley leading, she knocked on the door. There was a booming bark and a scrabbling at the door, making Lily jump. Back, Fang back, came Hagrid's voice through the door. Before he opened the door a smidge to peer out. Hang on, back Fang. Hagrid let them, while holding the collar of a huge boar hound. Hagrid's cottage was a single-room affair, with a warm fire and large bed with a patchwork quilt. Make yourself at home, said Hagrid, letting go of the dog's collar, who immediately started lavishing the trio with affection. Haley went for her usual greeting of hugging Hagrid's leg. Hello Hagrid, cozy place you got here. Thanks, said Hagrid, patting her head, before regarding the other two. And who are your friends? He sounded friendly enough as he said it, but there might have been a hint of suspicion. Haley disengaged from Hagrid's leg, and pointed them out. These are my roommates, that's Sophie, she's more of a listener than a talker. But she's fun to be around. And that's Lily Moon, she's cool I guess. Lily waved shyly, and Sophie stepped forward. And you are Rubius Hagrid, keeper of keys. Nice to meetcha. Haley's spoken fondly of you. This seemed to placate the giant somewhat. Has she now? He seemed to think for a minute before he spoke. I'll be honest, I'm not particularly fond of Slytherins, but you seem like decent folk. Any friends of Haley are welcome in my home. Come on, let's have a cup of tea, and tell me about yourselves. They all sat down, and Hagrid served tea, and some incredibly hard fruitcake. That only Haley could chew without difficulty. Wow thsshnsahd. Haley said, her mouth full after finishing her second one, earning weird looks from Sophie, as Lily tried in vain to bite into hers. Now I already know well enough about Haley, said Hagrid, but what about you girls? What's her stories then? I'm no one special, said Sophie, softening the cake with her tea. Me and Haley just clicked at the start of year feast. Oh come on, everyone came from somewhere, said Hagrid, who were her parents. Did they go to Hogwarts? No, said Sophie, they studied abroad. Don't bother, Hagrid, said Haley, giggling. Sophie's pretty tight-lipped when it comes to personal stuff. Now if you want to get her talking, talk about other people. That a fact, said Hagrid, looking at the girl in question. Sophie shrugged, not everyone is an open book. I prefer my life to be a locked dairy. Hagrid didn't look too happy, but Haley caught his eye, and she oohed up in her chair to whisper in his ear. To be honest, she has a good reason for not talking about her parents, something that would make her rather unpopular with the other Slytherins, something about blood, if you get what I mean. Hagrid looked confused, before it dawned on him, and he looked on Sophie with a bit of respect. Well, I suppose I can understand wanting to keep that close to her chest, especially around that lot. Sophie looked rather annoyed. Did you have to tell him? Haley shrugged. I'd rather my friends get along with each other. Hagrid decided to move the conversation along a bit, and turned to Lily who was once more out of the loop, and looked rather lost with the conversation. And what about you? Lily wasn't it. Got anything you would be comfortable sharing? Vocalized the shy girl. What would you like to know? I suppose, how about your family? I vaguely recall a Moon attended school back in the day. Cyrus Moon, I think he was. Any relation? He was my father. Lily said quietly. Thought so, said Hagrid. A Hufflepuff boy. Nice lad as I recall. What's he up to these days? Lily flinched. He's dead. There was an awkward silence. Lily looked down at the table. Hagrid leaned over the table and put a massive hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry. If I had known, I wouldn't have asked. Are you gonna be alright? I'm fine, said Lily. It was a long time ago. She forced a brave little smile. I'm just happy Haley lets me hang around. Ouch, now I just feel bad, muttered Haley. In her mind, Lily had just been upgraded from random tag along to pure. Must protect. One thing sorta bothered her though. Wizards sure put a lot of stock on family, huh? After everyone's rather shocked expressions, she realized she was being insensitive and quickly clarified. Wait no, I mean, I was curious why that was the first question you asked, Hagrid, and wizards seem to care a lot about their family name. Despite the awkward delivery, everyone was more than happy to move away from the topic of dead parents. Hagrid scratched his chin in thought. I suppose that is a fact. My guess is it stems from the fact that the wizarding community is a small one. And there are a lot of big families with strong ideals, and ties with other families. I guess sometimes, it's easy to figure out where you stand with someone, if you know their family and where they stand with yours. Haley frowned. I'm not sure I like that. I never even met my parents. I'm basically only a Potter by name. I don't like the thought that people will treat me differently based on a family I never knew. But people already treat you differently, Haley, Sophie pointed out. Girl who lived, remember? Oh, right, said Haley, knocking on her temple with her fist. And poking her tongue out. I gotta say, I understand why you might feel like that. But it still hurts a bit to hear you talk about our folks like that. Hagrid said. Haley looked rather awkward. Well, it's not that I don't like them or anything, may they rest in peace. It's just, I never knew them. They were dead before I could even remember. It's kinda hard to feel anything for someone I never even met. I am thankful, I wouldn't exist without them after all. But apart from that gratitude, my family consists of a surname and some relatives who hate me. Hagrid sighed. Like I said, I understand. And I don't blame her. I'm sure if Lily and James were here they wouldn't blame you either. They would just want you to be happy. Sorry for bringing it up. It's all right, said Haley, shrugging. But enough of this heavy stuff. In your note you said you wanted to know about our school week. Well, wait until you hear about what happened in my first Transfiguration class. Ith the conversation moving on to less loaded waters, they chatted away the rest of the afternoon about their school week, Hagrid warming up to the two girls, and inviting them back any time. They walked back up to the school. Isn't he cool though? Said Haley. He is very big, said Sophie. I wonder why. Who cares? Shrugs Haley, maybe he's Dutch. Come on, let's go back to our room, I could do with some chill time. Didn't we just spend a few hours, drinking tea and chatting? Sophie said, laughing. Hey, you can never have too much chill, Sophie. Haley said, with mock wisdom. When they opened the door to their room, they were greeted with Chen lying in front of the fire, purring softly to herself. Chen, Haley said. The cat girl noticed them come in and languidly stretched, and stood up. Hope you don't mind me starting the fire, it's so damn cold down here, and you were taking forever. Where have you been? I haven't seen you all week. Haley said, walking up to one of her oldest friends. A friend of yours? Sophie said, looking curiously at the strange cat girl. Chen looked Sophie up and down. What's this, a new friend? Don't tell me you are trying to replace me, Haley. Haley laughed and punched Chen in the arm. I couldn't get rid of you even if I wanted to. Sophie, Lily, this is Chen, my longtime partner in crime. Do you go here too? I don't remember seeing you at the sorting, said Sophie, extending a hand. Oh, I was there, just not being sorted. Chen said, accepting the handshake. I'm not a student, I'm just here to help my mistress and make sure Haley stays in trouble. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Don't you mean, out of trouble? Chen gave a Cheshire grin. Now where's the fun in that? So what brings you down here? Haley said, ringing herself back into the conversation. Oh right, I got a message for you from Ran. Chen said. Ran, you mean that extracurricular teacher? Sophie said. Ain't you told them, Haley? Chen asked. Haley shrugged. I can't say it ever came up. Ran is Haley's personal tutor. The only reason she's at Hogwarts is to continue Haley's education. Chen said. By the way, what's with this whole extracurricular class thing? Haley pouted. I was never told about it, I thought she was only here to teach me. It was that Dumbledore guy's idea. Since she was going to be here, he thought the student body could benefit from her extensive knowledge, and you know how enthusiastic Ran is when it comes to teaching, said Chen. She nudged Haley in the ribs. What's the matter, jealous that you have to share Ran with everyone else? Haley pouted harder. Just tell me the message. Your wish, Chen said, pouting until she stood in the center of the room. She then closed her eyes, and when she opened them, her brown eyes were replaced with Rand's golden ones, and when she spoke it was with Rand's voice. Chen, are you listening? Good, now memorize this message. Haley, your lessons will be starting this weekend. The first one being tomorrow, but we will be treating it as a test class for the other students. It will be starting at 2 in the afternoon, but I expect you by 1, as you will. I'll be helping me running this first class, and I need to run you through some things. Don't worry about finding the classroom, Chen will take you there. Good to know you are already making some friends. Feel free to bring along Miss Roper and Miss Moon should they wish to come. Did you get all that, Chen? Good, now go find Haley please, and then return. I have some and that's the message, said Chen in her normal voice. On a Saturday, whined Haley. Hey, no use bitching to me, I'm just a messenger, said Chen, who was now lying on Haley's bed. Man, being a school student must suck, huh? I bet you miss being as free as me. Sure, make yourself at home, snarked Haley. crossing her arms and huffing. Way ahead of you, Chen said, stretching out across the bed. Haley huffed louder, and walked over to her trunk. And throwing it open, climbed in, and slid down a ladder. After a moment of silence, some music could be heard from down the hole. Sophie shared a glance with Lily, who was equally mystified. And she peered down into the open trunk lid, where there appeared to be a room. After a moment's hesitation, she climbed down, followed by Lily. In the trunk was a medium-sized room, with a dim electric lamp. The walls were covered in shelves and posters. There was a large television against one wall, with a VCR and what Sophie recognized as a Sega Mega Drive, which Haley was using to play Space Harrier 2. "Oh hey guys," said Haley, reclining on one of the big puffy sofas. "Welcome to my portable lair, make yourself at home. I'd give you the tour but I'm kinda miffed at the moment." "What is this?" said Lily, her shyness forgotten in her interest in the TV. "It's Space Harrier 2, it's a shoot 'em up. It's pretty cool," Haley said. "I don't think that's what she meant Haley," said Sophie laughing. Before explaining, "Lily, this is a television. It's a Muggle device for watching movies, serials, or as Haley is currently using it for, playing games. Muggles can do that," Lily said, awed. "Geez, I keep forgetting how backward wizards are," Haley said, pausing the game and looking up at Lily. "Technically the television can't do it all on its own, it needs input from elsewhere, like the BBC. VCRs, and this Mega Drive." "Mega Drive." Haley got up and walked over to the TV, and pointed to the console. "It's a game console, made by Sega, and it's totally kick-ass," said Haley, becoming her usual peppier self as she lost herself in enthusiasm. "It's Sega's third console, and I love it to bits. It's got better sound, better graphics, and the games are nearly as good as the ones you can play in arcades. Hey, do you want to give it a try?" "Not necessarily this game, this one's a bit hard for a beginner," she said, taking out the game and going over to one of her shelves. "Let's see." "No. No, God no, ah," she finally exclaimed, pulling out a cartridge. "I got this new game before coming here, but I haven't had a chance to use it yet. It's the hottest release. It's called Sonic the Hedgehog." Lily seemed to be having trouble keeping up with all this information. "Ah, you don't have to. I mean, I'm not sure if I will be any good." "Nonsense, I haven't played this game either. We'll learn together," said Haley, placing the game into the machine. "We can take turns." "You just want someone else's score to beat," said Chen, poking her head upside down from the ladder. "Don't be mad just 'cause you suck at games," Haley said, poking out her tongue at the cat girl. "Oh no you didn't," said Chen, somersaulting down into the room and throwing herself on the other side of the couch. "I'm on next, let me show you some cat-like reflexes." "Hey, you're on third at most," said Haley. "Lily is going first, I wanna teach her how to play." "Oh, you don't," Lily tried, but was pulled onto the couch by the other two. Sophie watched in amusement as the enthusiastic girls tried to teach Lily a game they had never played, and contented herself with having a poke around the room. Dumbledore looked up as Snape walked into his office. "Is there anything I can help you with, Severus?" "Sir," said Snape, "there is something seriously strange with Miss Potter." "In what way, might I ask?" In truth, Dumbledore had been noticing a lot of strange things with Haley, but he wonders what Snape has seen to make this so urgent. Snape crossed his arms. "For a start, have you seen her teeth?" "Bonus. Fan of Doctor Who, are you?" said Sophie, looking at the large poster on the wall. "Yeah, specifically the fourth, he's the best," said Haley, as Chen was taking her turn. "I can't say I've had a chance to get into it. I don't really watch a lot of TV. Could never really find the time," said Sophie. "From what I've seen it looks pretty cool." "Fair enough. If you like we can watch some when we have time. I have some of them on tape." What's Doctor Who?" said Lily innocently. The two girls looked at her as if she had just grown a third eye. "And you call yourself British?" said Haley with scorn. "Huh, thanks for watch here,"